Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 121, The Battle of Opposite Forces. How about the flying knife? Will it work? Wondered Zen. Then he took the knife out from his space ring and threw it forcefully towards the curtain of light. Much to his astonishment, though the knife was old and shabby, it didn't cause damage to the curtain of light but instead, passed through smoothly. It seemed that everything, even the life energy, could penetrate and pass through the curtain of light freely except for Zen. Zen remarked that his skills were no longer useful to him, and thus he had to rely on his own strength to get through this obstacle. Unfortunately, he had tried several times only to be disappointed. He felt defeated as he heard Yolanda's voice coming from the thick black mist above him. The formless enchantment, break. As these powerful words were spoken, a roar of anger echoed in silence. It was the voice of the demon King Aldrich. At that same time, the black mist began to roll and release more intense energy. Zen, who was near the curtain of light, distanced himself as waves of billowing black mists came rolling toward him. With his feet on the curtain, Zen tried to escape from the surging black mist. He didn't know which way to go and soon a cloud of black mist enveloped him. Crackle. The destructive power of the black mist had intensified tenfold in a blink of an eye. Zen's skin was scraped and it opened to an ugly wound. It bled profusely in horror. When Zen finally struggled out from the cloud of black mist, to his dismay, there was another one moving on his way. The dark mists had started to cover every nook and cranny and he was now in a dead end with nowhere to hide. In truth, Yolanda was losing her power. These black mists were from the demon's holy fire. It was the demon's cryptic secret which could only be used by the powerful and special demons. How enigmatic it could be. This wasn't effective on Yolanda as it could not hurt her at all. The problem was the demon King Aldrich himself. His intensified agility and strength allowed him to hide his presence in the fire. He could manipulate the demon's holy fire like a skilled warrior. Swoosh! There was a deafening sound of a bone spur passing through the air. Yolanda ducked to avoid it from behind, but at the moment of her avoidance, a pair of long and bony demon claws came down from above her head. The formless enchantment. Slash! With Yolanda's cry, a thin transparent glow formed in her hand, and its sharp edge cut towards the claws. Bang! The powerful enchantment was easily broken by Aldrich, and its huge claws continued to move to Yolanda. Yolanda gave a wink and a stern look flashed on her face. Her gray pupils became whiter as winter frost as she furrowed her brows. If anyone had seen her expression, he would have been rather surprised. Ever since Yolanda arrived in White Emperor City, she maintained an indifferent look on her face. People noted that even the whole city were to be conquered and the entire eastern region occupied by demons, she would probably not show any emotions on her angelic face. But on this fateful day, she showed an emotion and that was anger. Her face became indifferent once again. This time, she didn't hide from the claws. The demon King Aldrich was much stronger than Yolanda, he didn't want to be defeated by a girl. And he was almost ready to crush this delicate human girl. He was startled and provoked when Yolanda rushed towards him. With a little snap of his fingers, he could smash the girl's delicate body. To his surprise, Yolanda came closer to him and he found that in her hand was a glowing blood-red enchantment. The blood prison enchantment. Swash! The blood-red enchantment expanded as soon as Yolanda threw it. It was creeping quickly, and finally enveloped her and the demon King Aldrich. When the blood prison enchantment completely covered them, Yolanda's life vitality gushed wildly from her navel like a strong tidal wave. Her life vitality had no color and invisible but nonetheless, precious. However, it was as powerful as Aldrich's evil spirit. Yolanda intended to use her life vitality to attack Aldrich. But it would do her much harm as it would to the enemy. However, in the demon's holy fire, Aldrich had an edge. It was Yolanda's last bullet to beat him and he had no way but to match her life vitality. She was determined to gamble her fate in one strike. Aldrich couldn't escape from the blood prison enchantment. As Yolanda's life vitality rushed towards him, He roared in his uncanny voice, "Human girl, I will never be defeated by your life vitality." As he uttered his words, waves of fierce evil spirit were released from his body to Yolanda. The evil spirit was the demon's life vitality. Yolanda's life vitality and Aldrich's evil spirit collided. The two opposite forces like water and fire constantly interwebbed with each other and produced a colorful light which carried an amazing power. This was a dangerous combat, and once it began, there was no stopping. The first one to retreat would lose the fight. So no one would stop until the very last drop of their life vitality was consumed. The Demon King Aldrich kept unleashing his terrifying evil spirit. He growled and growled while baring his sharp fangs to Yolanda as he tried to threaten her. To his disappointment, Yolanda remained stolid and still. Her hands crossed, her white silk robe fluttering, and her life vitality flowed to him like a tidal wave. At this moment, the battle outside the demon's holy fire gradually stopped. The three demon kings and the humans in the illuminating soul realm were in truce. The demon kings and the refiners from the Imperial army focused their attention on the black mist. The demon king Aldrich and Yolanda were within the black mist, and they were two of the strongest forces from each side. The outcome of their battle would greatly affect the whole White Emperor city. But the thick layers of black mist completely obscured what was inside, leaving them nothing to see about the ongoing battle. Did Yolanda lose? Her rival is the Demon King Aldrich, after all, said one of the refiners in the illuminating soul realm, with an anxious look. Don't worry about Yolanda, she is different from the rest of us. She was born with the ability to become stronger when facing a stronger rival, stated another refiner who had great confidence in Yolanda. The black mist of the demon's holy fire could disturb a soul, and we cannot see what's going on inside. Look, why is the bottom of the black mist dissipating? Then the curious crowd turned their eyes on the fire's bottom, where they saw a whirlwind vortex was sucking the black mist. A man in the illuminating soul realm descended, looked up from the bottom, and shouted, "It's Zen." What? Lenny was surprised with what he just heard. Then he moved to the bottom of the demon's holy fire on a silver sword, and there he saw Zen lying at the bottom. There were pieces of gold foils floating above Zen's body. They kept spinning into small whirlwind vortexes and then sucking the black mist. What happened to this boy? Lenny murmured in disbelief. Chapter 122, Osiro's Pillar. Zen's body were going through different changes. And it had happened before. For instance, he once absorbed Evil Land's fire in a cave. There was also an instance when he absorbed the fire of the Earth's core in an underground cave in the south. This made his body become a low-grade spiritual weapon. But Zen didn't know that the black mist was also a kind of flame. The demon's holy fire was a kind of flame that looked like a black mist because of its very low temperature. All the low-grade demons used it as a secret pill to cultivate their powers. The way to refine a corporeal body with the demon's holy fire was similar to Zen's mysterious book about weapon refining. The vortexes on Zen's body were absorbing the black fire quickly. In a short amount of time, the demon's holy fire that wrapped Yolanda and Aldrich was being swallowed by Zen unexpectedly. And at the rate of his body's absorbing power, Zen could swallow the rest of the demon's holy fire. The vanishing demon's holy fire harmed Aldrich, while Yolanda regained her advantage at the battle. The powerful men of the illuminating soul realm who were on standby could not believe what they were witnessing. They didn't agree with Yolanda taking the burdensome Zen to the battle, but they couldn't bring it up during the battle. And after Aldrich released the demon's holy fire, it became hard to tell the outcome of the battle. But they had never imagined that Yolanda's stubbornness could help them in this difficult situation. The little guy had unexpectedly absorbed the demon's holy fire. One of the demon kings was not in the best fighting capacity with his injuries. And amongst the three demon kings, only Osiros could salvage the situation now. If Aldrich got injured or died, the demons would be at a disadvantage. It seemed that the demon kings were discreetly communicating using a secret skill. Their eyes were rolling continuously and then abruptly stopped. Then without verbal words, they started to move simultaneously. They tried to approach the demon's holy fire from different directions. The three demon kings aimed to prevent Zen from absorbing all the demon's holy fire. They knew that Aldrich paid a great toll at releasing the demon's holy fire in an instant, so they couldn't let anyone destroy it yet. As long as the demon's holy fire existed, Aldrich would still be invincible. But if that bloke absorbed the demon's holy fire, it would greatly damage Aldrich. The three demon kings staying outside the demon's holy fire would prevent Zen from absorbing all of it at any price. The powerful men of the illuminating soul realm saw through the action of the demon kings and knew exactly what they were planning. We have to stop them no matter the cost. Spencer ordered as he waved his huge hammer. The men prepared themselves to attack at Spencer's command. At this moment, the battle between Yolanda and Aldrich would decide the fate of the White Emperor city. If Yolanda lost this battle, the White Emperor city would fall and the entire Burning Sky Empire would falter. Ho! Hugh waved his hands and a 5-clawed golden dragon appeared and attacked one of the demon kings. Shoo! Suddenly, countless tiny silver swords appeared beside Lenny. They spun in the same direction and eventually formed into a huge blade storm that blocked the demon king's way. Shoo! Another powerful man threw 3 paper symbols and they became a huge thunderstorm in an instant. It flashed a dizzying bright light and released a terrifying momentum. Each of the powerful men of the illuminating soul realm had powers based on their unique skills and personalities. At any cost, we can't let them get near Zen. We must give it our all to protect the lad, another powerful man roared. The powerful men attacked fiercely, but the 3 demon kings were ready to attack, and they rushed forward at maximum speed. The injured demon king didn't rush over after he was trapped by Lenny in a huge sword array with a total of 1080 tiny silver swords. This was Lenny's most powerful killing tactic called the Great Star Killing Array. When he was young, he was famous for his control over the small star array made of 108 tiny silver swords. Lenny dedicated himself in improving this technique until he could produce 10 times the number of tiny silver swords, which was now known as the Great Star Killing Array. This skill was 10 times more powerful than the small star array. Lenny once used the Great Star Killing Array to kill the ordinary demon king. And now, he would once again use this technique to fight another ordinary demon king who was injured. When the demon king finally rushed towards him, 1080 tiny silver swords shot at him simultaneously. No matter how strong the demon king was, he was no match to more than 1,000 tiny swords that stabbed his body. At last, he got killed and fell to the ground. With 1 demon king dead, only 2 demon kings were left to stop Zen. One was an ordinary demon king that could easily be defeated. Under a joint attack of some powerful men, he was captured. Now, the biggest challenge was Osiros. Osiros was an old but powerful demon king like Aldrich. His strength was way more powerful than an ordinary demon king. It needed Spencer and some of the powerful men just to stop Osiros. Watch out all of you. Osiros could use the pillar anytime. If that's the case, I will stop him up front. Spencer commanded the group and controlled his life vitality great god at the same time. In the history of the White Emperor city, only Yolanda and Spencer could battle Osiros and Aldrich face to face. While floating in midair, Spencer deeply breathed out. Then he breathed in quite deeply until his underbelly became bloated. His life vitality great god with a height of several feet started to shrink little by little until it was finally compressed to a size that was double his body. After the life vitality was compressed, its strength became 100 times greater. This incarnation was almost like the real one. His incarnation was like the customized armor that was instantly attached to his body. This technique was almost like the life vitality armor, only with some significant differences. The compressed armor from the huge life vitality god was much more powerful than the ordinary one. Spencer steadied his eyes on the rushing Osiros. With his high speed, he looked like a black line crossing the sky to the naked eye. Kill! Spencer waved the huge hammers in hands and tried to directly hit Osiros. Simultaneously, other powerful men showed great momentum and rushed behind Spencer to attack Osiros. When the Demon King saw the life vitality of different colors rushing towards him, he wildly flapped his wings and made a weird sound from his throat. Quack! You can never stop me! Osiros, pillar! The evil spirit emerged from his body and was congealed to form black pillars, and there were numerous chains attached to each of the pillars. Everyone, watch out for these black pillars. If you get caught by it, you will surely die, Spencer said. He waved his big hammers to hit the pillars rushing towards him. When the hammer hit the pillar, the chains around it rose quickly and targeted the hammer. Spencer sneered and waved the other hammer. Bang! The hammer and the pillar crashed into each other at a high speed and it made a sound that echoed through 100 miles away. The battle between the demon army and the Imperial army at White Emperor City abruptly stopped at the sound of the horrible blow. They looked up at the sky with fear in their eyes. The Osiros pillar was smashed to pieces by Spencer's hammer. It turned back to its original form as an evil spirit and then disappeared between heaven and earth. The other powerful men were having a difficult time facing Osiros pillars. One of the powerful men waved his machete at the sight of Osiros pillar approaching. When his life vitality was burning crazily, the machete turned into a blood cutter and tried to chop the pillar. This powerful man was confident in his strength and technique. His blood cutter was a top-grade spiritual weapon, and anything it had in contact with would surely be cut in halves. He had not met any weapon that could escape the wrath of his blood cutter since he reached the illuminating soul realm. Crack, but the blood cutter didn't destroy the pillar completely and got stuck deep in the pillar. The powerful man was surprised to see that his blood cutter didn't succeed for the first time. This cutter user was an old but famous refiner and reached the illuminating soul realm without a sweat. If he were anywhere in the eastern region except the imperial capital, he would dominate the place and nobody would dare to provoke him. But unexpectedly, he couldn't cut through the Osiris pillar. He went to pull out the machete from the pillar but didn't make it. When he came near the pillar, the chains entangled him together with his blood cutter and immediately trapped him inside the pillar. Chapter 123, The Battle of the Life Vitality. The refiner's face was distorted because of the attack. He wanted to run his life vitality to break through these chains. But when he tried to do that, he found that his life vitality couldn't be formed. He was then bound up to the Osiris pillar, falling rapidly. This was just one of the special functions of Osiris pillar. Anyone who was bound to it would be unable to use the life vitality. The pillar could lock the life vitality, and even the powerful men of illuminating soul realm could not overcome it. They had to rely on their physical strength and fight like ordinary warriors. There were also two other refiners being trapped by the powerful Osiris pillar and falling toward the ground one by one. Only Spencer could pound the Osiris pillar to pieces with his brute strength. There were also two other powerful men of illuminating soul realm that were able to avoid the attacks from Osiris pillar by their special and agile moves. In addition to the Osiris pillar, Osiris is also very strong. Only we three are here now and we must do everything to stop Osiris, cried Spencer. And then he raised his mighty hammers and bravely met Osiris head-on. The other two refiners were also good at physical combat. Together with Spencer, they successfully subdued Osiris' ferocious attack. While the three men were fighting closely to ward off the attacks of one of the demon kings, Zen kept absorbing the demon's holy fire. He absorbed it faster and faster, and finally he had taken almost half of the demon's holy fire into his body. The existing black mist was getting thinner, and one could see the figures of Aldrich and Yolanda from time to time. Aldrich's face looked dreadful amidst the black fog. He was holding his strongest card, and that was the demon's holy fire. As long as it was there, he was unbreakable. The holy fire not only could intensify his speed and strength but also could help him restore his evil spirit 3 times faster. These were all the reasons why Aldrich wanted to use the life vitality to compete with Yolanda with reckless abandon. Inside the demon's holy fire, Aldrich's power and strength had been enhanced greatly like an immortal. But now, it turned out to be much different from what Aldrich had expected. That human boy had consumed almost all of the demon's holy fire. The demon's holy fire could be used to improve the physical strength of a demon. If a demon general could cultivate in the demon's holy fire, the possibility of progressing to a demon king would be increased 10 times compared to when he refined in the normal world. However, there was never a demon who could absorb the demon's holy fire intensely. Even Aldrich, the demon king himself, could not do such a thing. Aldrich had used some special methods to lock up the demon's holy fire in his demon core. If he absorbed so much holy fire in one breath like Zen had done, his body would explode. He would definitely die, but this human boy was still alive now. Is he a real human? Oh, no, who is this boy? How could his body endure so much demon's holy fire? Aldrich could not understand that. Compared to the shocked and confused look of the demon king, Yolanda looked calm. Although she was also a little surprised to see Zen absorbing the demon's holy fire, she did not pay much attention to think about this strange phenomenon. On the one hand, she did not have too strong curiosity about anything, and on the other hand, her understanding of demon's holy fire was far less than Aldrich. She did not know how strong and terrible the demon's holy fire was. For Yolanda, it was just a fire from the demon. She kept summoning her life vitality from her body and fighting against Aldrich, life vitality to life vitality. But the consumption speed of her life vitality was much faster than Aldrich's. At this moment, her face was pale because of excessive extraction of life vitality. When Aldrich saw Yolanda's pallor face, he formed a plan in his mind. After all, he was a demon king and he thought that his evil spirit must be more than the life vitality of this human girl. Even in the absence of demon's holy fire, Aldrich was confident to win. Spencer and the other two refiners who were combating with Osiris felt elated to see that the demon's holy fire was getting thinner. But when they realized that Yolanda was competing with Aldrich on life vitality, their happiness disappeared. The evil spirit of a demon king was far greater than the life vitality of a human. Even though Yolanda was special from the rest of the refiners of Illuminating Soul Realm, and her life vitality which was stored in her body was several times more than that of a normal refiner of Illuminating Soul Realm, she was no match to a demon king. Not to mention to compete with Aldrich, which ranked as one of the strongest demon kings. Go help her. Spencer once again raised his sledgehammers to turn back an attack from Osiris, and then he took avail of such a short break time to ask the refiner of Illuminating Soul Realm beside him to help Yolanda. Once receiving the command, this refiner soon summoned his life vitality to generate a fire beneath his feet to quicken his speed, and then he was about to rush toward Yolanda. All these refiners of Illuminating Soul Realm knew clearly that it was a critical moment for both parties who were competing with their life vitality. At this moment, Yolanda and Aldrich were afraid of any outer distraction and could not spare any other life vitality to face the attacks from the others. Any distraction might lead to serious injury. And the refiner who planned to intervene was known for his agility. That was the reason that Spencer had asked him to help Yolanda. He could move faster than a speeding bullet. Just now he had bravely dodged the attack from Osiris' pillar because of his speed. But just as he was about to make a dash, Osiris also moved faster and stopped him from flying to Yolanda. Earlier, Osiris wanted to stop Zen from absorbing the demon's holy fire since it was significant to Aldrich. Now, since the holy fire had been absorbed by Zen, Osiris looked around, and noticed that Aldrich was actually competing with the little human girl with life vitality. At that moment, Osiris was completely certain that the little human girl would lose the fight. Therefore, instead of fighting against him, the refiners of Illuminating Soul Realm changed their plan and would like to save the human girl. Osiris had to stop Spencer and other human refiners. Everyone was so engrossed that they had overlooked one person who was lying on the light curtain, Zen. Silently lying there, Zen felt a hot mass engulfing his body. It was as hot as the burning lava that he had experienced before. The golden swirls had absorbed all the demon's holy fire and then converted to such a power that refined his body from head to toe once again. Ah, I do not want to feel this again. Zen cried to himself. He sat up on the light curtain and shook his arms to ease his stiff body. Then, he felt something strange in his chest. Wow, what's this? A new spiritual texture is on my chest. Zen was delighted to see this spiritual texture. Last time when he absorbed the fire of the Earth's core, he also found that a spiritual texture appeared on his chest, which symbolized that he had become the body of spiritual weapon. Now he had two spiritual textures on his chest. One spiritual texture represented that he was a low-grade spiritual weapon. If he owned two spiritual textures, he had entered the middle grade. A smile rose from his face. But on the other hand, he was a little confused. According to the previous experiences, he must absorb the fire to refine his physical body. But how could he receive the same effect after absorbing the black fog? He felt more confused now. The black fog which he saw was actually the demon's holy fire. It was also a kind of fire, but a special one, and few people knew that. Aside from the new spiritual texture, Zen found some other special things appeared on his body. Two streaks of unique runes had appeared on his arms, and in the middle of each one lay a blank space of the size of an egg. He lifted his arms and studied them for a while but could not find any clue to why they were there and what they were for. But they looked vaguely familiar to him and he must have seen them somewhere before. He had just absorbed the black fog, and now he was caught in confusion. He closed his eyes and tried to remember from where he had seen these runes. After he thought for a while, he gave up and started to look around to see what was happening. He saw two figures above him. And Zen wondered, what are they doing? Zen still sat on the light curtain and looked up. Aldrich and Yolanda were standing not far away, face to face. The way they stood was very strange. A ray of evil spirit was spreading forward and then was stopped by some invisible force. Yolanda's life vitality was formless and colorless. Zen surely could not see it. But due to his strong soul, he could sense Yolanda's life vitality. Life vitality against life vitality. Though his mind was still foggy, he finally understood what was happening. After becoming a nature creature, refiners indeed could rely on life vitality to defeat the other side. Some would even cultivate to strengthen their life vitality. With strong life vitality, they did not need to face directly to an enemy in the battle. Instead, Such cultivators would find an opportunity to drag their rivals to the combat with the life vitality. No actions, and no weapons. Just life vitality. Although it was dangerous, it could maximize the advantage of life vitality. When he saw the pale face of Yolanda, Zen knew that she was in danger. She might lose in life vitality combat. But Zen wasn't that anxious at all. He smiled and thought that it was safe for him to stay near the curtain of light. He lounged on the light curtain, looking up leisurely. Yolanda took a glance at Zen when he sat down. She then withdrew her eyes. She was focusing on the release of her life vitality and didn't bother to ask for Zen's help. The first one to turn to Zen for help was Spencer. Blocked by Osiros, Spencer and other refiners couldn't help Yolanda. But with the power of the life vitality, he could communicate with Zen and transmit his voice even from a distance. Zen, Yolanda's victory is very crucial. It could impact the survival of White Emperor City. Could you do us a favor and help Yolanda? Spencer was aware of Zen's dramatic recovery and shouted to him for help. On hearing this, Zen turned over from the light curtain. Spencer's inquiry did have some impact on him and it sounded reasonable. In fact, if it was some other human being fighting before Zen, no matter who he or she was, he would have already gone up to help. His current behavior was just something related to what Yolanda had done to him. So, he pretended to be an onlooker, crossing his hands before his chest. However, what Spencer said was true. If Yolanda failed in the life vitality battle with Aldrich, the strength of the human refiners would be much lesser than now. Thus, White Emperor City would be in chaos and taken over by the demon. Zen himself might also die as he would be easily pressed to death by one finger of the Demon Kings. With all these factors considered, Zen climbed up from the light curtain reluctantly. Anyway, his slow move satisfied Spencer and other human refiners. However, their smiling faces didn't last long and soon turned to worried ones. After all, this was Aldrich, a famous and strong Demon King, while Zen was just a young man who was only half-step to the nature level. They two fighters could not afford to be distracted in a battle of the life vitality as the rival might take the chance to attack. However, Zen was so weak before a Demon King. Aldrich might not need to spare too much of his attention and could kill Zen easily. Anyway, they never knew the result if they did not try. And now, they could only rely on Zen. The moment was suspended as all were looking at Zen, who was climbing up to the curtain of light and moving towards Aldrich. Chapter 124, A Good Plan. The light curtain was egg-shaped, floating in the air. Zen crawled to the edge of the eggshell and was only a few feet away from Demon King Aldrich. There was a saying that people couldn't be distracted when competing in battle of life vitality, for Aldrich he believed otherwise. Being the Demon King, he was beyond any human belief and standards, so a slight disturbance wouldn't affect him. Zen thought that if he had rushed without thinking, he might be stabbed by the Demon King's spike and his life would be over before he knew it. At this point, caution was his only friend. He thought that the safest way was to attack with his broken flying knife, but he didn't expect to kill Demon King with one shot. But if he could injure him, it could cause a considerable amount of effect on the Demon King. With that in mind, Zen gently pressed space ring with his finger and shot flying knife towards the back of the Demon King Aldrich. Meanwhile, the Demon King was ranting about his carelessness in ignoring the human boy when he released the demon's holy fire. He initially thought that the human boy was as weak as an ant. He wouldn't even pay much attention to a master of the illuminating soul realm, so why would he worry about a meek human boy? He was confident that the boy would eventually be corroded when exposed to his demon's holy fire. But Demon King Aldrich didn't expect that the boy would consume his demon's holy fire. He found it strange for an ordinary human to stand his demon's holy fire, let alone consume it like it was nothing. Witnessing this made him change his perspective about the boy. Since then, he didn't let his guard down at all. It also made sense to the Demon King why Yolanda brought the boy to the battlefield. If Yolanda didn't know that the boy had the ability to swallow the demon's holy fire, she wouldn't have brought him in here in the first place. After he processed all the details, he now concluded that everything wasn't a coincidence but premeditation. And Demon King Aldrich believed that the humans had more tricks up their sleeves. At that time, he sensed the flying knife that Zen shot at his back. Before Demon King Aldrich had time to react, the flying knife already hit him at the back. That tickles. By the way, that's a nice flying knife, kid, Demon King Aldrich chuckled sarcastically. But Zen was in disbelief when he saw how his flying knife stopped before hitting the Demon King as if there was a great barrier that was protecting Aldrich. Spencer and the other masters were fighting with the other two Demon Kings in the sky when they saw what was happening between Zen and Demon King Aldrich. They abruptly stopped and watched the combat nervously. Geez, what a pity. Spencer shook his head in disappointment. The kid's strength is only at the half step into the nature level and it isn't enough to deal with the Demon King. If it were me, that flying knife would surely hit him and that Demon King won't have the chance to escape. He would be dead in an instant, Spencer thought to himself. The other illuminating Soul Realm Masters were also disappointed at the turn of events. What is wrong with him? Does he really think he can beat that Demon King with his half step into the nature level? Said one of the masters. On the other hand, Demon King Osiris and the other ordinary Demon King were a bit relaxed and were enjoying the scene. That boy is stupid enough to fight Aldrich with his level. It's like going into a lion's den and presenting himself as food. He'll soon be crushed like an ant, Demon King Osiris said to the other Demon King. Zen was nervous, but he had to take another shot at this. He gently pulled the ring on his finger to take back the falling flying knife. He took several consecutive shots, but nothing even made it to Demon King Aldrich. The knife would lose its aim as soon as it got nearer to the Demon King. One shot almost hit back at Zen, luckily, he was able to dodge it. There was no chance he could kill the Demon King with the flying knife. He changed to use the Heavenly Ogre Fist. He took a deep breath and readied himself for the Heavenly Ogre Fist pose. He turned his original life energy to the demonic life energy. Ogres shaking the world. With his commanding voice and pose, a purple-black shadow accumulated in Zen's fist. Go to perdition, shouted Zen as he threw the purple-black shadow towards Demon King Aldrich. Zen was confident at the strength of his Heavenly Ogre Fist. He once defeated the illuminating Soul Realm Master Hugh with it, but Zen knew that his victory was only because Hugh was not 100% into their fight. Poof! But like the flying knife, the purple-black fist shadow hit an invisible barrier before reaching Demon King Aldrich. Zen failed again. His face showed his disappointment and frustration. Dang, both my flying knife and the Heavenly Ogre Fist didn't work. There's no way but to approach him myself. Dang it, but Demon King Aldrich is strong. His strength is far beyond mine. What if he attacks me and kills me in an instant? Zen thought hopelessly. Listen to me, boy. If you stop this nonsense, I will let you live as my servant after I capture the White Emperor City, Demon King Aldrich shouted at Zen. When Zen heard it, he was angered. He scoffed, I'm sorry. I'm not interested to be anyone's slave. So, what do you want to be? Demon King Aldrich asked Zen. I would like to be your master. What do you think? Zen sneered. Demon King Aldrich became furious. How dare you insult a Demon King like me? Do you know the consequences of your action? Well, I'm not interested in finding out. I only know that the human and demon are enemies, so don't try to lure me into surrendering, Zen said coldly. I like you, unfortunately, you'll have to die. I hope you won't regret the choice you made. Demon King Aldrich heightened the speed and frequency of releasing the evil spirit. Demon King Aldrich's strength intensified and the pressure in Yolanda's shoulder became heavier. At that moment, her beautiful little face turned pale and she was struggling to hang on. Zen looked at Yolanda and saw that she kept that blank face even at a time like this. It made her look more pathetic in trying to look calm and composed. Even though he didn't like Yolanda, he was moved by her determination. Well, there's no harm in trying again. Zen also knew that he had no choice but to fight Demon King Aldrich. If Yolanda lost in the battle, he would end in a more miserable situation than the people in the White Emperor City. This battle has to end now. Zen made up his mind and jumped from where he was towards Demon King Aldrich. He was close enough to Demon King Aldrich that he could reach the ladder in one jump. Seeing what Zen was doing, Yolanda took this opportunity to release more life vitality from her body. With Demon King Aldrich distracted, she could now take him down for good. It didn't matter what Zen would do as long as he could distract Demon King Aldrich. As he approached the Demon King, Zen shot a pale yellow sharp thorn from his forehead and darted at Demon King Aldrich. Spiritual thorn. He didn't expect to do much damage to the Demon King. His only goal was to distract him. But he was surprised to see that his spiritual thorn stabbed Demon King Aldrich's head. Wow, way to go, Zen shouted with joy. The pale yellow spiritual thorn did pierce Demon King Aldrich's head. But unexpectedly, the Demon King had no reaction at all. Demon King Aldrich laughed hysterically. I'm impressed. I didn't know you could launch spiritual attacks. But it doesn't really matter. You may be stronger than any normal human beings, but you're still no match for me. Only if your soul was a lot stronger, you could have already killed me, Demon King Aldrich said. But since you failed, let me kill you instead. Zen suddenly felt an invisible force rolling towards him. All the while he thought that the invisible force could defend Demon King Aldrich from any outside attacks like his flying knife and heavenly ogre fist. But he was surprised to find out that it could also be used to attack. What a tremendous force! He didn't have time to dodge it, so he just faced the incoming attack. Bang! With the power of the invisible force, Zen was thrown out. Bang! 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 He hit the bottom of the light screen and bounced back repeatedly like a rubber ball. After bouncing back for several times, the force of motion gradually decreased. Zen landed at the bottom of the light screen and fell unconscious. What now, kid? Tired already? Demon King Aldrich laughed hysterically. You're a brave ant to think you can bite a big demon king like me. Demon King Aldrich laughed again scornfully. Yolanda's eyes were fixed on Zen with her face still calm and unconcerned, but her eyes were wide and blinking rapidly. The illuminating Soul Realm Masters saw everything, and they shook their heads in disappointment. It was ridiculous to hope for Zen to defeat any demon king. After all, even for the masters like themselves found it difficult to defeat a demon king, especially Demon King Aldrich. There was no way Zen could survive that massive force of an attack. All of them thought he was dead. But lo and behold, Zen started to move. He raised his head first and got up. He was standing as if nothing happened to him. He stretched his body and felt that that blow almost broke his waist. Nevertheless, it was because of that tremendous power that Zen's body was now producing warm currents. The warm currents flowed into the center of his body and made him feel more comfortable. He was willing to take more blows only if they couldn't kill him. It was his way of practicing to reach the nature level. Seeing how easy Zen recovered from his attack, Demon King Aldrich trembled in fury. Meanwhile, not from afar, Yolanda's blank face changed. A sly smile crossed her face and her eyes were glowing with excitement. The chance of seeing a blue moon was higher than the chance of Yolanda ever smiling. If one saw Yolanda smiling, they would even think it was a coincidence and not because she was happy. Luckily, everyone was paying attention to Zen. No one saw the change in Yolanda's expression, not even Zen, who was busy planning on how to return the favor to Demon King Aldrich. While Yolanda and Demon King Aldrich continued to face each other, Zen was anxious in coming up with a plan. As he walked back and forth, he caught sight of Hugh in a distance and an idea instantly came to his mind. He waved his hands in the air to attract Hugh's attention. Amongst the illuminating Soul Realm Masters, Hugh was the only one defeated by Zen in a battle. But despite that, it didn't mean that he wasn't good enough to be one of the masters. All that had reached the illuminating Soul Realm were either the privileged or the most gifted. Hugh soon understood what Zen was trying to signal to him. In their last battle, Zen was able to absorb Hugh's 5-clawed golden dragon and turned it into the black dragon with his demonic life energy. This could mean that Zen could absorb other people's life vitality and used it as his own. Hugh knew exactly what Zen was planning. Without second thoughts, he stretched out his arms, released his 5-clawed golden dragon, and sent it to Zen. Chapter 125, A Narrow Escape from Death. The two demon kings were able to prevent the illuminating Soul Realm Masters from passing. However, it was difficult to stop them from releasing their life vitality. Despite everything, the two demon kings did not comprehend why the person had suddenly conjured a 5-clawed golden dragon. What was he plotting to do? The 5-clawed golden dragon whirled in the sky, flying towards Zen at a constant speed. When the 5-clawed golden dragon soared to a certain distance, Zen clenched his hands into fists and directly punched it. Ogres shaking the world. A purple-black fist shadow came straight at the 5-clawed golden dragon. Boom! The fist shadow penetrated into it, leaving a small black spot on the 5-clawed golden dragon's body. Initially, it did not seem to reveal any other effect. Then, in the blink of an eye, the little black dot spread quickly like wildfire. Soon, the entire 5-clawed golden dragon turned into a 5-clawed black dragon. Zen manipulated the 5-clawed black dragon into spinning in the air while wandering around. Meanwhile, Lenny, who stood in the distance, suddenly seemed to recall something as his eyes brightened. He waved his hand, and several silver swords flashed in it. As soon as the gleaming swords appeared, he launched them directly at Zen's direction. Imitating Lenny's move, Hugh also summoned another 5-clawed golden dragon from his hand and shot it towards Zen too. Whether it was a 5-clawed golden dragon or gleaming swords, Zen took on all of them without batting an eye. While still in his control, he made the 5-clawed black dragon consume them. After the five-clawed black dragon devoured them completely, it expanded more than twice its initial size. At the sight of it, the illuminating soul realm masters realized what had been on Zen's mind. All this time, the two men were releasing the life vitality and providing it to the five-clawed black dragon. Except for Spencer, whose life vitality was a huge incarnation, and was unable to be released, all the other people had taken out the life vitality from their bodies to shoot it towards Zen. The five-clawed black dragon endlessly devoured the life vitality. Every time it did, its body became more massive, and its power grew mightier. After a period equivalent to the burning time of an incense stick, a gigantic five-clawed black dragon appeared in the sky. Spencer was shocked to witness the power of this five-clawed black dragon. Clenching his fists tightly, he thought, the life energy of this young man is so terrifying. Despite being half-step into the nature level, he attained an immense momentum. His move offered such a surprise. It is so uncommon in the world. After seeing the five-clawed black dragon, Hugh's jaw nearly dropped. Who was there that could deflect such a fatal blow from this beast? Even if it were Spencer countering an attack from the five-clawed black dragon, he would surely be scared out of his wits too. No wonder I lost to Zen. It is not a disgrace as he is so powerful after all, Hugh thought. Lenny smiled and said in a low voice, "Huh. Despite merely reaching the half-step into the nature level, the man Nina favors is indeed not an ordinary person." Although dedicated to fighting back the evil spirits of Aldrich, when Yolanda noticed the huge five-clawed black dragon, her eyes revealed shock while her gray pupils dilated. However, it only flashed for a second, and then she quickly regained her composure. It was a rare sight to see her taken aback by anything. Unless it was something incredible, the girl did not typically display any kind of emotional response. However, one thing was as clear as crystal: Zen's method was incredible enough to succeed in capturing her eye. By taking advantage of the features of demonic life energy, and with the supply of the life vitality provided by the several illuminating soul realm masters, he had produced such an intimidating and horrifying five-clawed black dragon. However, as colossal and majestic as it was, there was one fatal flaw. If it were in actual combat, none of the illuminating soul realm masters or demon kings would feel frightened of this five-clawed black dragon. The reason was Zen's power still paled in comparison to the strength of the masters. Moreover, he was only at the half-step into the nature level. As a result, the speed of the five-clawed black dragon he manipulated was far from being as swift as the demon kings and the illuminating soul realm masters. No one was foolish enough to stand still and wait for the five-clawed black dragon to strike them. An opponent could easily run away and avoid the dragon. Then, as soon as the five-clawed black dragon disappeared, they could return and end Zen's life. Nevertheless, today's situation worked the best for this five-clawed black dragon to steal the show from everyone. Aldrich was now contending against Yolanda with life vitality. It was hard for him to be distracted, let alone move. When he noticed the five-clawed black dragon though, his face had darkened. He could not imagine how Zen, a human brat, was able to create such a terrific dragon. At the same time, the Demon King became perplexed. Aldrich thought, is it a trap right from the start or is it just a coincidence? If it is a trap, then they are engaging in some risky business. Did they really put all their hopes on a young human who only has half-step into the nature level? It is utterly impossible. But if it's a coincidence, is it God's way of saying that I will die today? The Demon King refused to accept such a cruel fate. It was apparent that beating the illuminating soul realm humans was child's play. Yet, why had it suddenly turned out like this? Not only did that brat, Zen, take away his demon's holy fire, but he now also conjured a titanic five-clawed black dragon to take his life. I am not giving up. While Aldrich screamed in his heart, Zen had sent the five-clawed black dragon to penetrate through the light curtain and rush towards him. As Yolanda was willing to cooperate as well, she depleted most of her life vitality from her body while the dragon attacked the Demon King. She was determined to kill Aldrich in one shot. Grr! The five-clawed black dragon tilted its head and growled while pouncing on Aldrich. It looked so powerful and intimidating that the earth trembled upon its roar. It opened its mouth and unwaveringly came at Aldrich. Aldrich found himself cornered and caught in a dilemma. Should I dodge? He thought. However, Yolanda would not let him escape. Without a doubt, the girl from the human clan would fiercely fight back until he was defeated. In that case, could he face the blow of the five-clawed black dragon without doing anything? Was that even possible? Even the powerful Aldrich was not sure he could withstand the attack. Even if he could block the attack of the 5-clawed black dragon and still come out alive by luck, the human girl who was right in front of him would still be around to take him down. "Grr, you human brat, I'll make you pay with your life." In his desperation, Aldrich finally realized that there was only one way left for him to survive, and that was to go all out. Suddenly, the Demon King reclaimed all the evil spirits. In the contest of life vitality, retrieving all of it was undoubtedly equivalent to suicide. It seemed that Aldrich did not have any other choices. At this moment, when he succeeded in reclaiming the evil spirits, Yolanda's life vitality trailed closely behind him and overwhelmed Aldrich with devastating force. Puff! Filled with too much life vitality, Aldrich spat out a mouthful of evil blood. The evil spirits that emitted from his body had weakened, as he was extremely hurt. Meanwhile, Yolanda had consumed enough life vitality during the process when she competed with Aldrich. Otherwise, she would have directly killed the Demon King by infusing all her life vitality into his body to make him burst out and self-destruct. The injured Aldrich flapped his fleshy wings, his body moving to sidestep every attack of Zen's huge 5-clawed black dragon. At the same time, he waved his flesh wings and dashed at Zen. It was apparent that Aldrich hated Zen to the core. The Demon King looked extremely zealous to kill him as quick as possible for revenge. Once Zen detected Aldrich's sudden attack, his face paled whilst becoming more alert. There was no time for him to reflect on anything else. Immediately, he made a run for it on the light curtain. After all, it was not a demon general, but a demon king that was chasing after him. If it had been a demon general that he had to face, he could have been capable of fighting back. However, as his opponent was the supreme demon king, he had no other choice but to run desperately. Judging from the current situation, even if he tried escaping, his chances of getting away unscathed were very slim. Shoot, he cursed as he ran. Why did he have to endure such distress? Of all people, it just had to be him who was beyond unfortunate today. Just then, a whistling sound caught his ear. Without hesitation, he rolled onto the ground as though it were an instinctive response. The next instant, he could not help but be glad, as a steel-gray bone spur had brushed past his ear. Aldrich's bone spurs were 10 times more powerful and rapid than a demon general's bone spurs. Although the bone spur did not cut Zen, the strong wind that came with the bone spur made his cheeks tingle. Standing up from the ground, Zen quickly shot his broken flying knife without even lifting his head. There was a huge gap between the Demon King and him when it came to speed. Presently, it was very much impossible for him to fight through his vision alone, he had to rely on his instinct and other senses. Needless to say, his instinct in fighting had matured through the many battles he endured in the past. Thanks to that, his aim was perfect as he shot the flying knife at the Demon King. Had his opponent been an ordinary demon general, the broken flying knife would have pierced through without any trouble. Nevertheless, that was not the case, as his opponent was Aldrich. Even though he was badly injured, and his remaining strength was only 1/10 of its normal amount, he was still the unconquerable Demon King in Zen's eyes. Boom! In an effortless manner, Aldrich reached out his hand and slapped the flying knife away. The broken flying knife, which had never failed Zen, regrettably did not have any effect on Aldrich. Although his attempt was futile, it had bought some time for Zen to escape. At the very least, he managed to run several meters away from the Demon King during the distraction. Unfortunately, his insane speed was beyond Zen's imagination. With a flap of his wings, Aldrich's huge body cut through the air and pounced on Zen like a savage beast. "Human brat, go to perdition. I am going to devour your flesh and suck your blood dry." Then, 4 bone spurs came out from Aldrich's body while they were all aimed at Zen from different directions. If any of the bone spurs struck him, it would render his cruel destiny set in stone. As the enraged Demon King intended to suck his corpse dry, Zen could already imagine himself perishing and turning into a mummy. Chapter 126, The Stubborn Girl. Loud footsteps ran through the jagged, rocky surface. The hairs on Zen's back stood on their ends when he sensed danger behind him. He continued to run away from the imminent peril, but it turned out to be useless. He knew where the danger came from, but he simply couldn't get rid of it. He finally thought that since he couldn't get away, he'd have to turn back and fight. With that in mind, Zen jumped up and turned around in the air. He saw that Aldrich had gotten close to his back and several bone spikes from his body got closer as well. The nearest one was only several feet away from his nose. "Get it off!" A sudden scream was heard. Ah! A 5-clawed black dragon had abruptly emerged above Zen's head and gave a loud roar. "It's great, slender body directly swooped downwards from the sky. Before, Aldrich was able to dodge that black dragon's attack, but the dragon didn't disappear. Now, Zen had it under his control and commanded it to stay parallel above him all the time. After all, Zen's personal skills were quite useless. There was nothing he could do for now except control this huge black dragon to defend himself against the enemy. Now, if Aldrich really decided to risk everything and wanted to kill him, he could end up dead even if Aldrich was under the attack of the huge five-clawed dragon. If Aldrich decided not to, he could have a chance of survival. However, Aldrich didn't want to resign himself to not fighting back. He saw his opponent was close at hand and he could kill Zen immediately, but the five-clawed black dragon in the sky quickly rushed down. "Ha, do you think that you can run away?" Aldrich said disapprovingly. He flapped his large, scaly wings and maneuvered strangely to the side. He seemed to wait for the black dragon to turn away before he attacked Zen again. Unfortunately, that didn't turn out to be the case for Aldrich. Across him, a smile playfully danced on Zen's lips as he slightly waved his index finger. The black dragon then rushed down and suddenly changed its direction, then flew towards him. When it got nearer, it unexpectedly swallowed Zen in whole. The huge five-clawed black dragon was made from Zen's demonic life energy, so when he was inside the dragon's body, he didn't get hurt, but was able to control the dragon to wrap him up. Apparently, Aldrich never thought that Zen would use this skill. For 1 second Aldrich was already determined to take his life, but now he was completely hidden deep inside the body of the black dragon. Aldrich couldn't do anything to him anymore. Quack! Aldrich screeched. Dozens of livid bone spikes suddenly came out from his body. The bone spikes hurled themselves towards the black dragon's body. The sharp ends penetrated it through, but Aldrich couldn't find Zen. He could only shoot randomly without an aim. Meanwhile, Zen silently lay on the bottom of the black dragon and remained perfectly still. Bone spikes continued to fly back and forth above his head. He was calm on the outside, but he really felt scared. He had to depend on luck this time. After a while, luck was on his side after all as not one bone spike hit him. On the other hand, Aldrich couldn't do anything to Zen. He opened his mouth which revealed rows and rows of sharp teeth, then a deep howl resonated from within him. His scaly wings flapped and lifted him up to leave. He was heavily injured, and if something went wrong he would die in this place. Just when Aldrich was about to flee, a blood-colored enchanted barrier suddenly appeared behind him. Blood Prison Enchantment. Life-breaking enchantment. 9-edged enchantment. It turned out to be Yolanda, who finally showed her trump card. In fact, she had prepared for this for a long time. It took her quite a while until she perfected all of the 3 enchanted barriers. If Aldrich had escaped in the beginning, Yolanda probably couldn't stop that. Aldrich's real strength was still much more powerful than Yolanda's, after all. Even if he was seriously injured, he somehow managed to run away. However, because Zen irritated Aldrich and he chased him, Yolanda had a chance to use the secret skill to recover a part of the life vitality and also launch 3 kinds of powerful enchanted barriers. Now, any of the 3 enchanted barriers was extremely powerful. The peripheral vision of Aldrich still showed him that and he suddenly dashed to the edge. The first enchanted barrier was smashed, but the second layer had blocked him. The Blood Prison enchantment was immediately restored to its original state as well and had restricted Aldrich in its grip once again. If only Aldrich was at his peak condition, even the 3 enchanted barriers would be no match against him. They were lucky that he was severely wounded now and couldn't break free. Zen, control your 5-clawed black dragon to rush into the enchanted barriers. A low voice was suddenly heard. It was Yolanda, who floated in the sky not too far away. To be honest, Zen actually didn't want to follow Yolanda. He had no reason to listen to her at all, but after having thought about it for a while, he finally realized it was a chance to kill the Demon King and as a human, he didn't find any reason to let that go. In that case, Zen slightly shook his finger. The black dragon started to move again and directly lunged at Aldrich. As the black dragon hurled itself forward, Yolanda controlled the 3 enchanted barriers. A hole appeared on each of them, and the black dragon passed through the holes. Like a mouse trapped in a cage, Aldrich dashed from left to right in the small and narrow passage of the enchanted barriers. He couldn't break them but his eyes darted to the huge, 5-clawed black dragon under Zen's control rushing towards him. When he realized that there was no way for him to escape death, Aldrich reluctantly soared into the sky and said, "Humans, you will pay a huge price sooner or later." Ah! Bang! Just as the dragon had neared Aldrich, the Demon King's body exploded into flames when he committed suicide by using his demonic core. The scene of a Demon King committing this type of explosion suicide was horrible to see. The dark energy from the explosion started to rise up gradually at crazily high speed and expand throughout the area. Yolanda's 3 enchanted barriers had only restricted it for a while, before it suddenly burst out in a resounding wave with a loud, booming sound. Bang! After Aldrich had done the suicide, the light curtain under Zen's feet suddenly disappeared. He couldn't fly, and the resulting impact from the explosion pushed him to the ground. On the other hand, Yolanda was pushed back by the impact wave as well, and her body was driven backward at a long distance. Her emotionless eyes caught a glimpse of Zen, who fell to the ground. Her snow-white figure suddenly flashed and rushed hurriedly towards Zen. When she had reached him, she gently waved a small hand above his body. 6 more transparent enchanted barriers flew above to cover Zen and formed a square enchanted box to lock him in. Zen looked at the transparent enchanted box around him, and he didn't know if he should laugh or cry. He was locked in this way when he went up, and when he came down, he was locked again, but it was better now. He didn't need to squat unfairly this time. After a short while, Yolanda finally controlled the enchanted box and fell on the ground gracefully beside Zen. Among the dark, thick cumulus clouds in the sky, the remaining ordinary Demon King and Osiros witnessed Aldrich's successful suicide attempt. Once they had realized that the general trend of attacking the city was gone, they flapped their huge leathery wings and called their troops back. They formed themselves into a black line and swiftly retreated right after. Spencer and the other powerful men of Illuminating Soul Realm saw that the Demon Kings had retreated and knew that the humans had won the battle. They sighed with utter relief, and their forces flew back consecutively to White Emperor City. The flames from the war in White Emperor City began to die down at the same time. The demon soldiers and generals attacking the city retreated, and the Imperial army chased them away. "Hey, when will you let me go out?" Zen asked. He knocked at the transparent enchanted box and waited for Yolanda's answer. In turn, Yolanda placed her hands behind and faced Zen. Her face wore an indifferent expression as she said, "Why should I let you go out?" At her response, Zen's eyebrows knitted together in fury. I have saved your life anyway," Zen shouted angrily. However, Yolanda simply blinked at him. "If you didn't save me, you would die, so it is not that you saved my life but you saved yourself," she said. Quote. Zen could not respond to that. After he thought about it for a while, he stated, "Even so, you don't need to lock me up all the time. After sending you to the military office, I can let you go," Yolanda replied. When he heard Yolanda's last words, Zen felt relieved. Under this situation, the military office of the Imperial Army wouldn't get him in trouble. While he did kill a counselor of the army from Zug family, he had also helped the army slay a Demon King just now. That was a huge deal, so he believed that even Hugh wouldn't bother him again. After a few moments, the powerful men of Illuminating Soul Realm finally descended from the sky one by one. Lenny and Spencer walked towards Yolanda as soon as they landed. When he saw Zen was still bound by the enchanted box, Spencer's eyes stared at Yolanda. "Yolanda, be quick and let Zen come out. Why do you have to lock him up till now?" he said. But Yolanda only shook her head. "I will let him come out after giving him to the military office," she firmly said. The others, including Lenny and Hugh, had heard what Yolanda said and stroked their temples in exasperation. This girl was truly extremely stubborn. Even under such dire circumstances, she still insisted on sending Zen to the military office. Now, Lenny was not pleased by her decision. "Yolanda, you can't send him to the military office," he said. The girl's steely gaze turned to look at him. "Why?" she simply asked. "Because he has done a meritorious deed just now. He is a hero and has saved our White Emperor City," he explained. The powerful men of Illuminating Soul Realm, including Lenny and Spencer, wouldn't usually get into a conflict with Yolanda at ordinary times. They had defended White Emperor City for a long time, and clearly knew about Yolanda's character and attitude. However, today would be different. Lenny told himself that he wouldn't make any compromise. Chapter 127, The Reward. For Lenny, it wasn't a big deal to send Zen to the military office because he believed they couldn't find any offense that Zen was guilty of. Even so, he would not allow Yolanda to take Zen there. "Even if people regard Zen as a hero, we couldn't turn a blind eye that he offended Hugh and even killed a military counselor. He should be subjected to a trial," Yolanda said stubbornly. "Yolanda, Please let it go. Spencer persuaded her as he stood by Lenny's side. Yes, Zen killed a military counselor and minded you, I investigated. That counselor from the Zug clan provoked him and wanted to kill him first, but Zen overpowered him. Moreover, Zen fought with us against the demon King Aldrich. So even if Zen had killed an officer of the Imperial Army, I would have still forgiven him with his crime. Spencer's words had absolute power. What he meant was very clear, he was the supreme commander of the Imperial Army. He had the authority to influence as to how Zen would be dealt with. I agree with that, and I don't want to pursue that matter. Now I know why Zen killed Joseph, my fault, said Hugh as he stepped forward near to Yolanda. Yolanda was silent for a while and after a careful thought, she nodded and said, I will let it go. When they heard it, Spencer, Lenny and Hugh felt all relaxed and heaved a sigh of relief in unison. Although they were determined to go against Yolanda, it was crystal clear that she could be stubborn and was used to getting her own way. She wasn't called a killer girl for nothing, since she was heartless and no one could stop her from doing what she wanted. Then Yolanda lifted her right hand. She snapped her slender fingers and the transparent shell around Zen began to soften, slowly turned into life vitality and was gone completely. Boy, you did a good job. You should be proud that you saved us. Lenny stepped forward and patted Zen's shoulder. At the back of his mind, he thought Zen and Nina would be a perfect match. Zen felt slightly embarrassed for such high praises and downplayed, it was just a coincidence. If Yolanda didn't take me to fight with the demon King Aldrich, I wouldn't have the chance to kill him. The truth of the matter, everyone doubted two things about Zen. 1. Why was he able to absorb the demon's holy fire? It was known that the demon's holy fire was mystic and powerful. And just like every coin with two sides, the demon's holy fire could prove to be deadly to humans, while it was worthy to demons. If an ordinary person was thrown into the demon's holy fire, it would corrode him to nothingness in a blink of an eye. Only the masters at the illuminating soul realm, such as Yolanda, were safe in the demon's holy fire. Even so, her perception and sight was adversely affected in the battle. But Zen was bizarre, and though he was half-step into the nature level, he was seen as an ordinary person in the eyes of the masters at the illuminating soul realm. Unexpectedly, Zen not only got no injuries, but completely absorbed the demon's holy fire. It was hard to believe. Had Spencer absorbed the demon's holy fire even just a single drop, he would have been greatly hurt. But Zen had absorbed a large cloud of the demon's holy fire and yet he was still alive and unscathed. They could hardly believe it. Second, it was Zen's life energy. When they were at the conference in the governor's house, they didn't take time to understand his life energy, though they knew that he almost killed Hugh because of it. They were so impressed when Zen created a 5-clawed black dragon, and as they recalled it now, they realized that Zen's life energy was so powerful that he could even absorb other people's life vitality. No one could create such a strong and ferocious 5-clawed black dragon except Zen. At first they thought that Zen might have used someone's life vitality to double its power, just like that of Hugh. But on the contrary, it would be difficult for Zen to combine his life energy and Lenny's life vitality, which was able to be formed two speedy silver swords. There were people in their realm that were willing to contribute their life vitality to Zen. Thus, Zen could have been able to create such a huge 5-clawed black dragon. They needed to win the battle, and that was the most important. The demon King Aldrich had to focus on the battle, and so did Yolanda. Because of that, Zen was able to take the chance to attack the demon king. If the situation had not been like that, they couldn't have won, since Zen's 5-clawed black dragon wasn't as speedy as they had thought. The stars had aligned that day and made it to such a magical ending. Perhaps that was an act of providence. The men wanted to uncover the mysteries about Zen, but on second thought they knew it was not good to make him show his secrets, although he was only half-step into the nature level. Zen was only half-step into the nature level, yet he had made such great achievements. They believed that Zen was destined to be a great man. Finally, the men stopped their curiosity to flourish. Then Lenny put his arm around Zen and said, "Let's go to the governor's house first." The White Emperor city was almost destroyed after the demon attack. It brought a large number of death toll, and what was worse, the Imperial Army had lost several masters at the illuminating soul realm. But through it all, it was regarded as a big win. After all, they had eliminated two powerful demon kings. One of which was the powerful demon King Aldrich, who was known to be savage and tough as an opponent. After defeating the demon's army, the soldiers began to clean the rubbish, which was one of the aftermath of the battle. "Uncle Lenny, have you seen Nina and other disciples?" asked Zen as they arrived at the governor's house. Lenny was delighted and smiled from ear to ear, and he thought that Zen had actually cared for Nina. But in truth, he misunderstood it, as Zen was just concerned about all the disciples from Cloud Sect. They were escorted back by some people before the battle began, answered Lenny. Hearing this, Zen felt relieved. The entire White Emperor city had been in chaos during the battle. If the disciples from the Cloud Sect had been stranded in the city, there might have been a lot of fatalities. When the battle ended, many officers gathered in the governor's house to report the number of dead soldiers in their teams. A series of names and numbers were uttered, and mostly were the troops of the Imperial Army stationed in the White Emperor city to protect the north side from demons. Today they paid a respect to their fallen soldiers. They had won the battle, but in the end, they lost thousands of lives. As soon as the number of casualties and the loss of the White Emperor city were counted, a tribute ceremony began. As we all know, Zen gave us the greatest contribution to win the battle, who is an outer disciple from the Cloud Sect's Drizzle Peak. Spencer exclaimed at meeting hall of the governor's house. If not for Zen's strength, a lot of us would have died and the entire White Emperor city would have been under the dominion of the demons. Zen, on behalf of the Imperial Army, I wish to express my gratitude. When Spencer finished his speech, he bowed to Zen, much to the surprise of the people around them. Zen was overwhelmed as the Supreme Commander of the Imperial Army bowed to him. Like a scared rabbit, he stammered, Governor, you are flattering me, but I don't deserve such high praises. There was once a great man named Qin Yan. He knelt down to a beggar who saved a person's life. Today, you helped the Imperial Army win the war and thousands of lives were spared. Certainly, you deserve it. Spencer told a story earnestly. It was said that Qin, a respected gentleman in ancient times, was once a poor man. He walked on the side of the river and saw a beggar save a person from the river. He had no money to reward the beggar, so he knelt down to salute the beggar. Spencer told a short story for Zen to consider and accept his praise. We can't give you a remarkable military feat since you are not a soldier of the Imperial Army, but as a representative of the Imperial Army, I am here to award you 3 treasures, and you can choose the treasures yourself as you enter our treasure house. Announced Spencer. 3 treasures. He can choose freely. The crowd got noisy and all their eyes sparkled with excitement. Over the years, the Imperial Army had accumulated great fortune of treasures, and only those that were priceless were kept at the Imperial Army's treasure house in the White Emperor city. They were gifted to soldiers with extraordinary feats. Receiving this award was extremely hard, and you were not even allowed to select one for yourself freely. But Zen was given the honor to enter the treasure house and could freely select 3 treasures. Everyone knew there were tons of treasures, and all the officers were envious of Zen. After the meeting was over and everyone left, Spencer led Zen to the Imperial Army's treasure house. The Imperial Army's treasure house was hidden below the ground. Zen was following Spencer as they walked underground along the dark narrow passageway. Spencer ignited a candle after he opened a heavy stone door, and the entire treasure house lit up. Even in faint light, the whole treasure house blazed with golden brilliance, sparkling to its glory. Chapter 128. The Phoenix Crystal and the Emerald Crystal. The resources the White Emperor city had saved over the years couldn't be compared to those of the Cloud Sect and the Burning Sky Palace, but they were a lot more in number than those of the 7 noble clans. All kinds of spiritual weapons and treasures were stocked up roughly in the wooden frames on the wall, randomly pushed into nooks and corners as if those things didn't seem to be rare in the city. Zen could choose any 3 treasures he liked, and he was glad to accept the offer. He didn't have a strong interest in spiritual weapons as he had quite a stock of heavenly essence in hand, and he could easily barter it for the weapons. He scanned the top rack of the frame, skipping past the spiritual weapons. Spencer was surprised to see this. The spiritual weapon was of no use to the powerful men of Illuminating Soul Realm, but Zen, in his position, should be keen on them. His indifference was peculiar. Spencer pointed to a pair of treasured swords at one side. This pair of treasured swords are called the Double Ring Killing Swords. They are top-grade spiritual weapons with extraordinary power. If you choose them, they will only be counted as one of your 3 treasures, and are certainly worth more than their value. Zen nodded but didn't answer. He still wanted to see the rest of the stock. Spencer noticed his disinterest in the weapon and had no choice but to follow Zen as he stalked forward. After walking for a while in the treasure house, Zen suddenly halted, his eyes locked on a wall not far away. 3 treasures hung on it. They exuded strong energy, but each of them looked incomplete. The first one was an emerald knife. It seemed to be made of jade all over. Unfortunately, the knife point and handle were missing, and only the middle part of the blade was left. It wasn't the blade but the purple crystal set in the middle of it that attracted Zen. The crystal was surrounded by a circle of runes. Zen had seen the runes today. After the second spiritual texture appeared on his body, the latter had become equivalent to a middle-grade spiritual weapon. At that time, 2 rows of runes had appeared on his arms, same as those on the knife blade. Zen frowned as he looked at the 3 broken weapons, lost in thought. Suddenly, he discerned that the runes on his arms should be used to inlay. Earlier, Zen had thought that the runes on his arms looked familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen them before. There was a mention either in Evil Land's secret collections about refining weapons, or in Chase's weapon refining principle that this kind of runes were used to inlay a crystal. The runes had never before appeared on a human body, so Zen didn't identify them immediately. But now, looking at the broken weapons on the wall with the runes marked on them, he instantly realized what they were. Zen was struck dumb. It meant that his body was a spiritual weapon, and these crystals could be set in it. "What is it? Have you taken a fancy to this stuff?" Spencer smiled. These broken weapons were used by some powerful men of illuminating soul realm. This knife here, it's called Jade Butterfly, and used to be the walking saber of Scholar Joss. It was a top-grade spiritual weapon, but unfortunately, it was destroyed by a demon king in a battle. The rest of the knife was broken and only the blade is left now. It's not worth a cent though. Its one and only valuable part is the phoenix crystal that rests on it. Can this phoenix crystal be used to inlay? Zen asked. Of course. Jade Butterfly is potent because of the phoenix crystal's effect. I remember that Scholar Joss wielded this knife to cut 100 times in the blink of an eye. The speed should give the credit to the phoenix crystal, Spencer explained, so he kept the blade. Zen nodded and pointed to the blade. I will choose this one as the first treasure. Yes. Zen, are you proficient in refining weapons? As far as Spencer knew, only a weapon refiner would be interested in the crystals. Was Zen capable of that? Could he really refine weapons with the phoenix crystal? Refining weapons? Zen shook his head in the negative. He had a preliminary grasp on the method because of the weapon refining principle, but he had not personally tested it so far. He couldn't claim to be a proficient weapon refiner. Spencer blinked his eyes in surprise, but still nodded at him. Zen, since you have chosen the blade as your first treasure, it is yours now. The broken spiritual weapons had been hung in the treasury since long. Most people allowed to enter this treasure house were the members of the Imperial Army. There were weapon refiners in the army, but they wouldn't go to the battlefield to kill an enemy, and rarely got the chance to commit military exploits. They could hardly qualify to enter the treasure house and choose their reward. Few people chose the crystals as a reward. The top-grade spiritual weapons were already assembled in aplenty. They were more suited to them. What about the one next to it? Zen questioned. Another broken weapon hung next to the blade of Jade Butterfly. It was a red spear that had been separated into several parts. Again, a blood-red crystal rested in the middle of the spear point. They watched as a dim red light flashed inside the blood-red crystal. The light grew bright and dim from time to time, like it had its own heartbeat. This spear is named Tronson and is also a top-grade spiritual weapon. The crystal embedded in the spear point is an emerald crystal. Complemented with the emerald crystal, Tronson had the strongest penetrating effect and could easily penetrate an enchanted barrier, Spencer said patiently. Penetrate an enchanted barrier? Zen stared at the crystal with interest. After getting locked in the box several times, he had become wary of Yolanda's transparent enchanted barrier. Even if he got his hands on a weapon like Tronson, it was possible he would be unable to break her enchanted barrier. However, if he encountered other ones in the future, it could prove to be a handy weapon. Spencer nodded. Yes, Emerald Crystal's strength has a strong influence. Tronson was destroyed by the demon king Sheen. In those years, Sheen had mastered the skill of the enchanted barrier. Initially, the powerful men of Illuminating Soul Realm in White Emperor City could do nothing to Sheen, but the Emerald Crystal broke through his enchanted barrier. At long last, Sheen was defeated, but unfortunately, in the process, Tronson too was destroyed. Looking at the pieces of the broken Tronson, Zen could readily imagine the intensity of the battle. I will take this one too, Zen stated, pointing at Tronson. Of course, I will take it out for you in a while. Spencer smiled. There is another crystal left. Would you like that too? Zen glanced at the remaining weapon that hung on the wall, a formidable broken axe. He shook his head. The crystal on the axe radiated with a brilliant light, but Zen only had 2 rows of runes on his arms that could inlay 2 crystals. The extra crystal would be impractical. After choosing the 2 crystals, Zen walked down further. The kind of riches the treasure house was heaped with were far beyond Zen's imagination. Besides all sorts of weapons, there were different types of defense treasures, jade symbols, hidden weapons, pills, and so on. It boggled his mind. The treasury had almost everything in it, and each of the resources was valuable. Zen was nearly dazzled as his eyes scanned the hall. Unfortunately, he only had 1 spot left. If the 2 crystals he chose weren't helpful to him, he would return one of them. Zen sought for a long time and finally fixed his eyes on a small, inconspicuous box, probably used to store pills. He stared at it for a while before reading the words on the box out loud. Nirvana pill. With a cautious expression on his face, he asked, "Is this the grade 6 Nirvana pill concocted by the legendary pill refining master Churchill?" Among so many pills, Zen had the sagacity to pick this one. He certainly had a good eye. Spencer smiled ruefully. There were all kinds of fortunes in the treasure house of the Imperial Army, but only a dozen of them were truly valuable, and the Nirvana pill was one of them. If one took the Nirvana pill, he or she would be recovered of all wounds, no matter how dangerous they were. As long as the person had breath and could swallow the medicine, he would become right as rain in an instant. The pill could also cultivate the soul. If the soul was damaged or hurt in any form or manner, the Nirvana pill could repair it. At the same time, the Nirvana pill could raise the consumer's strength to 3 levels. A warrior at the 5th step into the nature level could be promoted to the 8th step within 3 days after taking the pill. The pill was exceptional magic but also had a fatal flaw. It could only be used by a refiner below the illuminating soul realm, and was quite unusable to a powerful man of the illuminating soul realm, such as Spencer. Even so, the pill attracted the greedy eyes of the noble clans. Many large families would donate a large quantity of life-saving objects to cultivate their elite disciples. The Nirvana pill was undoubtedly the best of the lot. It could cure the wounds of the body as well as raise strength in a short amount of time. Regrettably, the creator of the Nirvana pill, Churchill, died at an early age, when he was just 43 years old. Warriors commonly had long lives worth hundreds of years, but Churchill was short-lived, so he left only a few Nirvana pills behind. Its number had dwindled over the years as they were taken, so the pill had become rarer to find in the market. Initially, it didn't have a high cost, but it went up all the time. Today, a Nirvana pill was worth nearly 100,000 cubic crystals. It was beyond the purchasing capacity of a nature creature. More often than not, it was the elder of a family who bought the Nirvana pill to give to the elite of a young generation. The one who bought it didn't eat it, and the one who ate it didn't buy it, which meant that the Nirvana pill's price had gone through the roof. "This Nirvana pill will be my 3rd choice," Zen announced, nodding with satisfaction. Truth be told, Spencer had planned to secure the pill for a younger elite in his family. As long as the young man gained some sort of accomplishment in the Imperial Army, the pill could be rewarded to him. But now, Zen had picked it as his own, as one of the 3 treasures Spencer had promised him. As the governor of the Imperial Army, Spencer couldn't go back on his word, so he just nodded reluctantly. Zen's eye was far too clever. Chapter 129, The Inlay. The Nirvana pill had the greatest value of all treasures and the other 2 spiritual weapons only had a relatively low value. Those were selected by Zen. As Zen observed the 2 spiritual weapons, he found that the only valuable parts of them were the Phoenix crystal and Emerald crystal that were inlaid on each weapon. Typically, these 2 crystals were useless for outsiders but very practical for Zen. After Zen left the Imperial Army treasury, he was given a big room to stay. After the battle was won and demons retreated, the Imperial Army continuously sent people to clean the rubble brought by the destructive fight. So Zen was going to leave the White Emperor City after 2 days. He was satisfied with the big room, but what he wasn't happy about was that his room was next to Yolanda's. Dealing with Yolanda was uncomplicated as he only needed to avoid her wrath. Not to provoke her or at least stay away from her so she wouldn't lock him again inside the box. When he settled down inside the big room, he took a refreshing bath and washed away all the filth of the past few days. He felt better afterward and sat down in a dark corner of the room. Then he took out and studied the broken jade butterfly from the space ring. From what Zen knew, top-grade spiritual weapons were not usually inlaid with crystals. The power of this weapon might come from the crystal itself, which was similar to a fairy weapon. Undoubtedly, the jade butterfly was a great knife and might have served his owner faithfully. It was such a pity that it was destroyed. "I will remove this phoenix crystal first," murmured Zen as he stretched his hands and tried to snag the phoenix crystal out from the knife but failed. He could try again with harder force this time but was afraid that the phoenix crystal would be chipped. For a moment, he didn't know what to do. The crystal was precious to him and shouldn't be taken down roughly. There must be a smart way to do it. Then an idea hit him. In the weapon refining principle, there was a trick on how to take down crystals. He took out the weapon refining principle in no time from his space ring and scanned the pages. The booklet had recorded and kept well-hidden secrets, and that included tricks used by Chase in his lifetime. It encapsulated Chase's skills and experience. Zen found what he was looking for, and on this specific page, the methods on how to remove crystals embedded in treasures were recorded in detail. Zen read the method carefully, word for word, and then his face sank with disappointment. He mumbled, "According to this book, life fire is needed to take down the crystal. Oh, this is tough." Zen had been practicing two kinds of cultivation methods, the purple light fist and the heavenly ogre fist. Both methods generated life energy. Apparently, he must cultivate a new method to generate fire, if he really wanted to take down the crystal from the jade butterfly. Zen was stunned for a moment as he held the weapon refining principle in hands. Then a smile crossed his face, and his eyes lit. Since he needed fire, could he use the black fire from the huge furnace in his mind? The black fire was able to extract the heavenly essence from the spiritual weapon and could imitate the functions of fire. That left him one problem: the black fire was so powerful that it could burn everything on its way. He was afraid that the phoenix crystal would be smelted by the black fire. Zen was lost in his deep thought for a while, and his eyes lit up again. He made a heartfelt decision, and he decided to take the risk. He then closed his eyes and began to communicate with the giant furnace in his mind. Whoosh! In a short while, a ray of black fire came out between Zen's brows, circling wildly around in the midair. Then it let out a quick, sharp sound when it saw the two broken top-grade spiritual weapons and came rushing to them. Zen's expression suddenly changed when he saw that the black fire was going to attack the weapons. He reached for the two spiritual weapons and shielded them in his hands to avoid the impact of the black fire. "Wait, wait, wait. These are not smelted for you," said Zen quickly. The black fire had a soul, and it was clever and spiritual. It hovered in the air and moved around like it didn't want to heed what Zen had said. Zen was amused when he saw that the black fire acted like a child with tantrums. Then he suddenly realized that he had a long spear called tronson. There was a crystal embedded in the head of that spear, but the shaft was no longer useful to him. He broke the shaft from the spear's head and handed it over to the black fire. The black fire circled happily, flew towards Zen and swallowed the shaft. The shaft was crafted from solid metal. Though it was very heavy and strong, it was melted like a candle. And then drops of heavenly essence appeared behind the black fire. When he saw the heavenly essence, Zen blinked his eyes. He couldn't believe what he just witnessed. Even though the shaft of the top-grade spiritual weapon wasn't that valuable, it produced so much heavenly essence. Zen counted them and was surprised to know that there were more than 40 drops of heavenly essence. It produced more heavenly essence compared to a top-grade mysterious weapon. It was unbelievable. It had been known that the higher the grade of the weapon, the more heavenly essence it could produce. The long spear had been battered from years of use. If it was a top-grade spiritual weapon, and pristine, would it produce hundreds of drops of heavenly essence? In his mind, he saw the black fire offered him the heavenly essence and then lit 9 dragon scales. Zen summoned the black fire again. Zen didn't intend to light the dragon scales, but rather to remove the crystal on this spiritual weapon by the power of the black fire, which the black fire didn't do yet. Zen needed to outwit the black fire, for it was clever and unruly. Taking down the crystal was not as easy as he hoped it would be. "Well, I've just given you a treat and now you are going to obey me," said Zen as he held up the glistening blade of the jade butterfly, pointed his fingers to its runes. Then he further added, "You need to activate these runes, so I can take down this phoenix crystal. When it's removed, then the whole blade will be all yours." Speaking carefully, Zen instructed the black fire as if he was speaking to a child. Zen raised the jade butterfly in front of the black fire. To his surprise, the black fire rushed to the jade butterfly and went straight to the phoenix crystal. Seeing this, Zen was quick to move the blade of the jade butterfly away from the black fire. "Ah, the black fire didn't follow my directions," said Zen with frustration. The flickering black fire was giving him a headache. Though it resided in the depths of his mind, it didn't completely belong to him, and he was having a hard time controlling it. But giving up so easily was never Zen's character. He still got plenty of time, and he could patiently teach this little guy to understand what he meant. It took him 4 long hours to teach the black fire. It seemed to him that the black fire had finally understood that he wanted it to enter the runes. The moment the black fire entered the runes on the jade butterfly, it lit up a light that wasn't too vivid. Zen could see the runes move, the outer and inner parts twirled in opposite directions. He looked closely and saw the phoenix crystal in the center of the runes waggled. Then he gently shook the blade. Flip-flop. The phoenix crystal twitched and fell to the ground. "Thank goodness. It's finally loose," said Zen with a beaming smile. He then waited for the black fire to emerge from the runes. When it was out, he threw the blade of the jade butterfly into the air. The black fire rushed to the blade like a hungry lion and devoured his reward. The blade soon disappeared, leaving drops of heavenly essence. The phoenix crystal no longer had its color and luster after it was removed from the runes. Zen put it down and planned his next step. "Now, it's time to think how to inlay it on one of my arms," said Zen to himself. It brought a shiver to his bones when he thought that a crystal would be deeply embedded inside his body. Although he was a special human, a spiritual weapon in a human figure, it was still strange to inlay a foreign matter into his arm. But he had to embrace it because it would make him more powerful. The runes on his arm must be activated to inlay the precious gem into it. And they must be activated by the black fire. Although the black fire was a part of him, he must be very careful not to burn his arm with its powerful yet damaging energy. "Well, I gambled once, and I will do it again," said Zen as he made a decision to take the risk. Chapter 130. The Power of Zen's Fist. Zen gritted his teeth at the thought and was ready to bet all on a single blow. He stretched out his arm and motioned for the black fire to go into the runes on his arm. As a result of his intensive training, the black fire could now easily recognize the runes in Zen's arm and would instantly dive into them. As soon as the runes absorbed the black fire, Zen's arm trembled a little. The extreme power of the black fire emitted heat and Zen could feel the warm sensation crawling from his arm. Though the heat was overwhelming, Zen only felt relief rather than pain. In no time, the runes started to rotate. When the inner and outer parts moved, the center of runes flashed a bright light. As the runes began their ritual, Zen grabbed the phoenix crystal with his left hand and stuffed it in the center of the runes. Buzz! As soon as the phoenix crystal touched the runes, a blinding light sparked but runes stopped rotation and returned to normal. The phoenix crystal suddenly vanished. Zen was stupefied and touched the spot where the phoenix crystal was. He pressed it and felt something hard beneath his skin. He assumed it was the phoenix crystal embedded into his skin. After the black fire finally came out of the runes, Zen stood up and tried to move his right arm. "It's time to test the phoenix crystal. Let's see how this can improve my speed." In this room, all the facilities that Zen needed for his training were available and soon he found a stone man to practice boxing with. Standing in front of the stone man, Zen squared his elbows and took a deep breath. Then he swiftly shook his fist at the stone man. Bang 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 bang. In the blink of an eye, Zen threw 20 punches in a row and left marks on the stone man. When he finally stopped, Zen's right hand trembled. He was surprised to see the agility of his right hand. During his fight with a demon king, Zen had almost got killed. He realized that speed was a crucial element when fighting with masters if one wished to survive. That was why he chose the phoenix crystal to make up for his shortcomings. Now that the phoenix crystal was on its place, Zen had only one crystal slot left to fill. He looked at his spear and examined the remaining crystal attached to it, the emerald crystal. According to Spencer, the emerald crystal had the special ability to destroy any enchanted barrier. The fact was that Zen's current strength could do nothing to enchanted barriers, and he wouldn't miss the chance to utilize the emerald crystal. The method was the same. He carefully took it out from the spear and stuffed it onto his arm. But unlike with the phoenix crystal, Zen felt nothing special after the crystal was embedded into his skin. Perhaps it was because of the nature of the emerald crystal that it could only be used to destroy any enchanted barrier. After the 2 crystals were finally embedded into his skin, he returned to his secluded corner to rest. The soldiers of the White Emperor City had been quite busy these days with rebuilding the defense facilities and inspection on all the people of the city. The inspection was necessary to ensure that no demon general could walk among the people of the White Emperor City because the demon generals could devour a human body without leaving any marks, and they could use the skin as their disguise. Bang bang bang. Zen heard a loud knock on his door. When he opened the door, he saw several soldiers holding a demon-revealing mirror. The head of the soldier group greeted Zen respectfully. Although he knew nothing about Zen or his achievements, he believed that anyone who was qualified to live in the area must be an important figure of the Imperial Army. Sir, we are currently doing an inspection in the whole city. May we request you to stand here? The soldier said to Zen as he formally bowed. Zen nodded and cooperatively stood aside. Then several soldiers placed the demon-revealing mirror in front of Zen, and when his image was finally reflected in the mirror, the soldiers took it back. When everything was cleared, the head of the soldiers thanked Zen for his cooperation and left. They went to the next room where Yolanda was staying. The soldiers knocked on the door, but there was no response. The head of the soldiers ordered, "Keep knocking. There must be someone inside." After a few attempts, the door finally opened and the soldiers were greeted by the expressionless face of Yolanda. "What's up?" Yolanda asked. The soldiers were surprised to see Yolanda. Unlike Zen, Yolanda was well known amongst the soldiers and her name held a great reputation in the city. The head of the soldiers stuttered, "Officer Yolanda, we apologize for this unannounced visit, but we are currently doing an inspection in the whole city. We know you very well, but we have to follow protocol. We hope you can do us a favor and cooperate with us." Clad in her usual 9-color long dress and a pair of clogs on her feet, Yolanda stood at the gate and asked in a calm manner, "What is this inspection about? And why should I go through this inspection again?" "Well, because demon generals might be lurking here, and we are using the demon-revealing mirror to find them," the head of the soldiers told all the details to Yolanda. Being known as the killer girl, Yolanda was not someone these soldiers would trifle with. Although her facial expression was blank, she still looked intimidating and her aura sent shivers down the soldier's spine. "There's no way I am possessed by any demon general, so I don't need this silly inspection. Off you go then." Yolanda was about to go back to her room when she heard a soldier speak. "Officer Yolanda, I'm afraid you cannot refuse. This is a direct order from the leader, and everyone is obliged to undergo inspection. Even the commander is no exception to the rule. So please cooperate with us." Though the soldiers were scared, they must follow and execute the military order. But Yolanda just looked at them without saying a word. She didn't intend to do the inspection at all and could care less of any military order. As she was about to close the door, Zen stepped forward and said, "In front of you are loyal and responsible soldiers. As a key member of the White Emperor City's guards, you should set a good example to them by cooperating in the inspection. Why are you making things difficult for everyone?" The soldiers felt uneasy but still were grateful when Zen stepped in and spoke with Yolanda. This was something these soldiers wouldn't dare do. When Yolanda heard Zen, she suddenly turned around. The hemlines of her dress were slightly lifted by her sudden motion, revealing her slim legs. She stared at Zen with her blank eyes and said, "It's none of your business, so I suggest you go away." Zen sneered and said, "I know that I might be overstepping, but it's the right thing to do. It would make everything easier for you and everybody else. Besides, it will only take a few seconds." But Yolanda just kept on staring at him with her expressionless gray pupils. Suddenly, a transparent enchanted barrier appeared when Yolanda flipped her fingers. Dang, she got a hot temper. Zen raised his eyebrows and quickly stepped back. He knew Yolanda could be obstinate, but he didn't expect her to be so unreasonable. She was so easy to get irritated that anything would possibly result in violence. The soldiers knew that Zen was only trying to help, but there was nothing they could do. They stood aside and prayed in hearts that Zen would come out of this alive. Zen was moving at his top speed, which in Yolanda's eyes was actually very slow. She could see his every move clearly and anticipate his next step. He was now surrounded by several transparent enchanted barriers coming from different directions and trying to capture him. As these enchanted barriers approached him and surrounded him, he lifted his left hand and a red light flashed from his arm. Using his fist, he smashed the transparent enchanted barriers in front of him with all the strength he could muster. Before, Zen's powerful innate energy was no match for any enchanted barrier and his punch had little effect on it. But at that moment, Zen felt some strange red energy fired out of his left arm. It went through his left hand and finally hit the transparent enchanted barrier that was in front of him. After the red energy slammed forcefully into the enchanted barrier, a small red crack appeared. Zen was thrilled and punched on the red crack once again. Bang! With the crackling sound, the small crack spread throughout the entire transparent enchanted barrier and instantly shattered it into pieces. The formerly invincible enchanted barrier was finally broken by Zen's fist. Ah! The soldiers who were standing aside and watching the battle were shocked when the enchanted barrier shattered. From the ranking they came from, these soldiers were well aware of how strong Yolanda was and that she was an illuminating soul realm master. They knew that Yolanda was the best in using enchanted barriers and only a few people, like the Demon Kings, could break her enchanted barriers. The soldiers were initially worried that Zen would just suffer great damage in fighting Yolanda, given his half-step into the nature level. But the young man took them by surprise when he broke her enchanted barriers. Having the privilege to stay here, he must also be someone special. They didn't have a clue how he was able to muster such strength. Even Yolanda was surprised. Her usual expressionless eyes glimmered in surprise. "How did you do it?" Yolanda asked coldly. Zen lifted his hand and smiled. "It's none of your business." "Do you still want to lock me up?" "Nah, I don't think so. From the looks of it, the red energy in your fist is an effect of the emerald crystal. But how did you obtain it?" It wasn't easy to pique Yolanda's interest, but this one did. Though she kept a poker face, one could tell that she was curious to know. "I said it's none of your business. I suggest you move along with the inspection so these men can leave," Zen said coldly. He stood there with his hands behind his back, waiting for Yolanda to comply. "Oh, is that so? Then let's see how long you can keep up with my enchanted barriers." She stretched out her slender fingers and snapped all of them at the same time. Swish! Large numbers of transparent enchanted barriers appeared one by one. They started rushing towards Zen at a crazy speed. "We'll find out." Zen was also looking forward to a fight. He could use Yolanda's short temper to gauge the strength enhanced by the two magical crystals. Bang! With the strength of the emerald crystal on his left arm, Zen slammed the enchanted barriers one by one, leaving a red mark on them. He already knew that the red energy from the emerald crystal could weaken the stability of the transparent enchanted barriers. Even the tiniest taint could damage the transparent enchanted barriers. After tainting the enchanted barriers with the red energy using his left fist, Zen started throwing punches into the enchanted barriers using the power of the phoenix crystal to destroy them completely. Despite Yolanda summoning enchanted barriers at a high speed, Zen just smashed them easily. The pieces of the broken enchanted barriers shattered on the ground like rain. Every tinkle was the sound of Zen breaking the enchanted barriers into pieces. Seeing that her enchanted barriers were of no use on Zen, Yolanda decided to change up her game. An intimidating aura started to emit from her body. Suddenly, an enchanted barrier appeared, slowly encircling Zen. This newly summoned enchanted barrier was different from the first ones. From the color of this enchanted barrier, Zen realized that it was the blood prison enchantment that Yolanda used to deal with the Demon King the other day. Chapter 131, The Racing Heartbeat. The blood prison enchantment was, in fact, an exceptionally formidable enchantment. Even a Demon King like Aldrich spent a long time and a lot of hard effort just trying to break through it. Such enchantments with great power were usually used against adversaries who were in the illuminating soul realm. If it were someone else who found that his normal enchantment had failed to trap Zen, he would end his efforts and give up immediately. However, Yolanda had a unique and controlled personality. When Zen lightly broke her enchanted barriers, the girl's level-headedness never faltered. Instead, she did not hesitate to cast the blood prison enchantment. Her colorful dress swayed as she leaned on the edge of the blood prison enchantment, wearing a pair of small clogs. "Can you break through the blood prison enchantment, too?" She challenged Zen, who was in the enchantment, a faint smile slightly visible on her face. Standing in the middle of the enchantment, Zen felt it emanating a bloody aura. With his eyes fixated on her face, he suddenly cracked into a grin and said, "I thought you couldn't smile. Surprisingly, you have such an attractive smile." His tough opponent blinked, revealing a hint of confusion in her gray pupils. Then, with a flip of her delicate hand, jets of bloody auras within the enchantment shot towards Zen. From what he could remember, the bloody aura had the power to disturb the mind and drive people mad. Under its influence, people with weak souls might even destroy each other. When Zen felt hot while the bloody aura seeped into his mind, he could sense it striving to affect his soul. It made him a little excited. Unable to deflect its invasion, he closed his eyes and felt himself entering the state of forgetting himself. When he opened his eyes again, however, there was only sobriety and calmness in his facial expression. To his surprise, it turned out that the blood prison enchantment had little impact on him. "I can crash the blood prison enchantment as well." After the words left his mouth, he walked to the edge of the blood prison enchantment and then swung a punch at it. Bang! The emerald crystal's power shot out of his left arm and into the enchantment. Although the emerald crystal could restrain the blood prison enchantment, the enchantment itself was exceptional. And as a result, when the emerald crystal's power condensed and formed a web, the enchantment's bloody aura began to devour the power. Before Zen could enlarge the opening in the blood prison enchantment, the bloody aura succeeded in swallowing and neutralizing the emerald crystal's power. The triumphant girl's face broke into a thin smile again. "You said you could break the blood prison enchantment. Then why don't you do it?" she taunted. On hearing Yolanda's provocation, Zen narrowed his eyes and contemplated, "This blood prison enchantment is much stronger than the transparent enchanted barriers. On top of that, it could also naturally fix itself. With my current strength, breaking through it is proving more difficult than I thought. In theory, my demonic life energy could devour all kinds of life vitality. However, even though the enchantment possesses so much life vitality, it was futile trying to eradicate it that way last time." He paused and frowned a little. "As it can't be destroyed from the outside of the enchantment, what if I pour the demonic life energy inside the enchantment instead?" A victorious glint flashed in his eyes. The idea did not sound far-fetched. While creating a small gap in the enchantment using emerald crystal, he could transfer the demonic life energy to its insides as well. The man had no idea if his method would work, but with the situation at the moment, it was worth a try. With this in mind, Zen started to relax and even had a long and exaggerated stretch. "Why should I break the enchantment? Having me locked up like this is good. You can keep me here if you want," he said and laughed. After Zen finished speaking, Yolanda was at a loss for words. Although the girl was outstandingly intelligent, she was extremely simple. Now she had no idea that the man was deliberately trying to provoke her. As she watched Zen stretch leisurely in the blood prison enchantment, Yolanda's competitive spirit finally burst. She did not realize that there were more expressions on her face today than in the last few years combined. "You're hopeless if you give up. You have to keep trying anyway," persuaded Yolanda, leaning on the edge of the enchantment. "No, I do not want to try. You are in the illuminating soul realm, and I am only half step into the nature level. How can I break your enchantment?" Shaking his head solemnly, he thought, "Yolanda is too simple for her own good. It's so much fun to tease her. How would you know that you really can't do this when you haven't even tried?" Yolanda persisted, shaking her head. "I can't do that, I just know," he said, waving his hand helplessly. The girl's eyes flickered with disappointment. For a moment, she just stood there as though she were thinking about something. Suddenly, she added, "Just have a try with all your might. If you ever do get to break this enchantment, I might consider giving you a reward." "Really?" A surprised expression spread across Zen's face. Somewhat suspicious, he examined her pretty face and asked, "What's the reward?" "Any reward you want as long as I can do it." Yolanda spoke earnestly. "Well." The man raised his eyebrows slightly. It was just what he wanted her to say. Although, Zen never thought that the girl could come up with such a solution so soon. For a brief minute, he wondered if he should not have tricked her into such a situation. Nevertheless, all reason to sympathize was lost when he remembered that she had been keeping him in such a confined space for such a long time. "Okay, I'll have a try." After that, Zen took 2 steps toward the edge of the blood prison enchantment, found a proper position, and began to launch his demonic life energy. According to the nature of the demonic life energy, a trace of it was more than enough to make his plan work. As long as it could consume the bloody aura from within, the amount of the demonic life energy would shoot up. Finally, Zen took a deep breath and threw a punch at the blood prison enchantment. With the emerald crystal's red energy, he made a small gap in the enchantment. Immediately as he had expected, the bloody aura repaired the gap with visible speed. The result was a clear repeat of earlier, but with one exception. In this instance, he had injected a wisp of the demonic life energy into it, which quickly spread like a dye in the water. When the bloody aura surrounded the demonic life energy began to counter and devoured it like no tomorrow. It seemed that the tables had been turned. The demonic life energy spread quickly, and more rapidly. Then a fist-sized black blob appeared on the blood prison enchantment, and a small patch of it turned black-purple. After what felt like a few minutes, the entire blood prison enchantment finally turned all black-purple. Yes, thought Zen elatedly, it meant that he was in charge of the whole enchantment. Before anyone else realized what was happening, he tapped his finger gently on the blood prison enchantment and shouted, "Break." As soon as it received Zen's order, the demonic life energy in the blood prison enchantment promptly dissipated between heaven and earth. It did not take long before he completely broke the blood prison enchantment. The eyes of the imperial soldiers who were watching widened in great surprise. No one could believe what he or she was seeing. Evidently, a man only half-step into the nature level had shattered the renowned blood prison enchantment. Everyone in the imperial army knew about the illustrious legend of Yolanda's blood prison enchantment. 2 years ago, during a war at the Heaven and Earth Towers, the girl single-handedly trapped 3 ordinary demon kings with it. Albeit these 3 demons were not as powerful as the demon kings, Osiris and Aldrich, they were still demon kings nonetheless. What was even more remarkable about this feat was that she trapped all 3 at once. The siege of the 3 demon kings turned the war around. Imperial soldiers in the illuminating soul realm cornered a powerful demon king and killed the 3 ordinary demon kings. Such an achievement provided a knockout blow to the demon army. During that time, not only did Yolanda round up the 3 ordinary demon kings, but she also valiantly defeated more than 3,000 demon soldiers and generals. Ever since then, people called her the Killer Girl, and the label had been widely known in White Emperor City. Soldiers who had participated in the war could clearly remember how bewitching and beautiful she was in her white dress stained with demon blood. Still, a question remained in everyone's mind. Who was the man who had just broken through Yolanda's blood prison enchantment? He wore a robe of an outer disciple of the Cloud sect. Being half-step into the nature level, the man was just as strong as a centurion in the imperial army. The soldiers failed to fathom how a man of such low caliber had broken the enchantment. Could Yolanda have let him win? Almost immediately, they dismissed this speculation. Although they were unlikely to encounter big shots like Yolanda, they had heard many stories about her. According to old rumors about her personality, it seemed impossible for the girl to lose on purpose. As the blood prison enchantment disappeared, Zen approached Yolanda with a bright smile and said, "Remember your promise. Now give me my reward." "Of course," Yolanda said with a nod. "Don't talk nonsense. Just tell me what you want." "Well, then give me a kiss," he said casually, pointing to his face. Upon hearing Zen's words, the soldiers around him nearly picked their ears on instinct. The man's words came as a bolt from the blue. With such an odd request for a reward, they wondered if they had heard him wrong. Not only was this person skilled, but he was also incredibly bold. Despite the girl's reputation, he had the nerve to flirt with Yolanda in front of everyone. More than that, the powerful girl's promise was precious, but this man spoiled it with such a trivial thing as a kiss. With a strange look on her face, Yolanda blinked and said, "This request is too simple, I can do much more than this. Think it over and change it." "No, this request is good enough," Zen replied, smiling and bending his face close to hers. While looking at Zen, Yolanda scowled as though she did not understand his logic. Then quietly, she walked towards the man, stopped in front of him, and tiptoed on the small clogs while leaning close to him. A soothing fragrance overpowered his senses as the girl drew closer. Her moist lips touched his cheek as light as a chicken's peck and then quickly moved away from him. Even though she did not turn a hair, she did not say anything else and left to retreat to her room. As soon as Yolanda was back in her room, she sat on the futon used for her daily training. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes and tried to practice. To her surprise, she felt restless, which was a first as it was not in her nature to feel that way. Bending her long legs, she rested an arm on the colorful dress while the other played with the hem. As her frown deepened, she stared blankly out of the window. "That's so strange. Why is my heart racing?" she murmured, sounding confused. Chapter 132, Dragon Valley. Zen was only a teenager, and he had only been joking when he asked Yolanda to kiss him. When remembering his experience of being locked up by her with her enchantments, he couldn't help but have come up with such an idea to revenge on her. But surprisingly, Yolanda kissed him on the cheek without any hesitation. After her lips had left his cheek, he gawked at her in shock for a while. The soldiers standing beside them stared in shock too. They didn't expect that Yolanda would have agreed to his request so easily. What's wrong with her? They wondered as they shook their heads. Ever since that little incident, Yolanda spent almost all her time in her room, and Zen never met or saw her again. On the other hand, Yolanda was already used to this kind of life. In addition to defending the city with the Imperial Army, she had been practicing cultivation in her room for most of her time. After some time, Zen was going to leave the city. He collected all his stuffs in a bag and hoisted it on his back before going out the door. He stopped in front of Yolanda's house and looked at it for quite a long time before turning away. He began his path to his destination on foot. Since all the disciples of Cloud Sect had left, of course nobody would send another giant flying chariot to pick him up. Thus, Zen had to go back alone. Fortunately, the demon had been defeated and 2 demon kings had been killed. The demons' camps had reduced significantly as well. Furthermore, the Imperial army in the White Emperor city had completely destroyed the demons in the surrounding areas and Sky Forest. What was left to do was to plan the next counterattack to take back the Heaven Tower and the Earth Tower. However, these had little to do with Zen because he was only a disciple of Cloud Sect, not a member of the Imperial army. When Zen had reached the boundary of White Imperial City, he headed for Cloud Sect. The trip to White Emperor City had definitely given him a lot of experience. Aside from refining his body into a middle-grade spiritual weapon by absorbing the demon's holy fire, he had gotten 2 crystals which were quite helpful for increasing his skills. Even more exciting for him was he felt a change in his lower abdomen. After he had been punched hard countless times, the warm currents gradually expanded his lower abdomen. Maybe it was time for Zen to transform his life energy to life vitality. Once he succeeded, he would become a genuine nature creature. If everything went well, his skills and competence would improve a great deal. These thoughts made Zen speed up more at a brisk pace. In the middle of his trip, he suddenly realized that he had passed through Sky Forest and entered the northernmost county of Burning Sky Empire, G County. Compared with the other counties in the eastern region, counties in the north were not that prosperous. Aside from the fact that G County couldn't compare to the luxurious imperial capital, it was also much poorer than Zen's hometown, C County. Despite this, Zen felt much better because after running wild alone for 2 days and nights, he could at least see people here. It wasn't a big deal for him to run half the land of Burning Sky Empire and return to Cloud Sect. However, since he had no important mission to fulfill, it was unnecessary to rush. So, Zen took his liberties and walked into a restaurant to rest after entering G County. The restaurant he chose was called Golden Moon Restaurant. Although it wasn't on par with Golden Wind Restaurant, it was already considered a luxury place for ordinary people. It could easily be taken as the most high-end restaurant in G County as well. The doors were opened by a polite waiter. After his journey of 2 days and 2 nights, Zen looked weary and dirty. Fortunately, the waiters of Golden Moon Restaurant were very experienced. They didn't look down upon Zen because of the way he dressed. On the contrary, they were quite respectful to him. As far as the waiters were concerned, people like Zen could be taken as a warrior. These men were usually very rich and generous. These waiters had learned from someone that the warriors had a kind of currency called cubic crystal. One could buy more than 10 Golden Moon restaurants with a cubic crystal. In these men's eyes, gold and silver were nothing at all. All those things they overheard about the cubic crystal were by no means empty gossips. But a small amount of the cubic crystals Zen held could easily make an average family become rich. After Zen had sat down at a table by the window, a waiter came to take his orders. Soon enough, delicious dishes and food were served in front of him. Since no one was dining with him, Zen didn't have to care about table manners. He continuously munched on the dishes and food on the table without even raising his head. Soon, there were only scraps of leftovers on the table. Perhaps because Zen ate too fast, people at the neighboring tables shot him dirty looks and whispered among themselves. However, he paid them no mind at all. What he thought about instead was where to get a horse after dinner, so that he could continue his journey as soon as possible. If only I can get a flying chariot in G County, Zen thought to himself, but he knew that there was little chance that his wish would come true. In a county of this size, it was possible however to buy a swift horse like the flying dragon horse or the lightning horse. Although not as fast as the flying chariot, they could help Zen to speed up his journey and save his energy. The waiters might know where I can buy a swift horse. I'd better ask them later, he thought. As Zen busied himself with finishing the remainders of his meal, a group of guys had entered the restaurant and walked upstairs. They spoke rather noisily and looked quite arrogant. One of them reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 pieces of gold bullion, each piece of them was about the size of a fist. He banged them loudly on the table and looked around. "Waiter, bring us the best wine and dishes of this restaurant," he yelled. The man who seemed to be their leader stretched his limbs carelessly as he slouched on his chair and ordered the waiters in a raucous voice. All the waiters were dumbfounded at the sight of the big gold bullion the man had slapped on the table. They immediately served these guys with much bowing and fussing over their meals. Meanwhile, Zen observed them for a few seconds and then went back to his food again. They spoke in such deafening volumes that everyone in the restaurant clearly heard their conversations. The sound of the metal utensils clinking against plates mixed with their cacophonous voices. "Brother, are we really not going back to Dragon Valley?" asked a man among them. The group's leader raised an eyebrow at the question. "Go back to Dragon Valley? You're just dreaming. Do you even know who they are? Let me tell you, they are from top 7 noble clans. No matter which one you provoke, they can even destroy our bamboo leaf sect with a single finger," he said with a wide-eyed expression. The rest of them just shook their heads at this fact. "Alas, it's unfair. Our sect has been staying at Dragon Valley for so many years, but now we have to leave because it was occupied by some powerful group. What a shame," the man who sat beside their leader angrily exclaimed. It was true, and once again the rest of them nodded in agreement. "Since we have no choice, we have to leave. Even though a strong dragon finds it hard to control a local snake in its place, our sect is not even a local snake in their eyes." "And who are they?" "They are even more powerful than strong dragons," their leader continued. He spoke the words with such exaggeration, as if he couldn't find a better metaphor. They continued to eat their food as they talked more about their current topic. "Fortunately, they are generous. With those cubic crystals they gave us, we don't have to worry about our future life. Let's find some girls and have fun in the brothel tonight," another one of them piped up. When one of them started talking about fun and brothels, the rest of their words drowned in Zen's ears. He raised an eyebrow when he heard them talk about Dragon Valley. The name was not unfamiliar to him, because he had seen it before on a book page when he had previously read the weapon refining principle. There were 2 place names on that page, Cloudy Mountain and Dragon Valley. They were not well-known places, so Zen was not that familiar with them. Besides, he had been busy with preparing the mission of the trial for slaying demons, therefore, he hadn't paid much attention to those 2 places at that time. But now, since he heard the name again, he carefully began to listen to the conversation of the group. From what he could hear, Zen could tell that these guys came from a sect named Bamboo Leaf Sect, but they looked more like a gang of scoundrels. Since they said that they had been staying in Dragon Valley for years, then Dragon Valley must be their former base. Now, they had been driven out from Dragon Valley by the top 7 noble clans. To compromise for their loss, the noble clans had given them several cubic crystals. A slight smile formed on Zen's lips. Since the weapon refining principle could be sold at such a high price, there must be an amazing secret in it. Zen possessed the book, so he had every reason to know about this secret. As soon as Zen finished his meal, he put down his chopsticks and walked towards the group of rambunctious guys. "Dear friend, can I ask you something?" Zen asked with a smile. The group leader felt a hand tap his shoulder and turned around. "What is it?" he asked in surprise, his eyes wide like brass bells. "Can you tell me where's the place named Dragon Valley?" Zen asked. Their table went silent for a few seconds. Then, they all snorted. They looked like common civilians when they were in the county, but in the mountain, they were a gang of bandits who lived on robbery. It was only natural that they were reluctant to talk to an average person. Besides, Zen looked so young, like an inexperienced teenager. The man shook his head and impatiently shouted, "Go away. Where is Dragon Valley? It's none of your business." However, Zen wasn't annoyed and instead, continued to ask, "It's in Cloudy Mountain, right?" He briefly remembered that the Dragon Valley was located in the Cloudy Mountain. At this point, the leader of the noisy group was irritated. His brows knitted and his eyes bulged in anger. "Are you deaf? Whether it's in the Cloudy Mountain or not, it's none of your business. Young man, don't blame me if you don't go away," he shouted. Upon hearing those words, Zen narrowed his eyes into slits. The people on the table immediately felt an overwhelming wind-like shockwave roll out of him. They were not average people and all of them had killed many others at some point. However, they had just reached the level of skin refining or flesh refining, and could only be taken as the junior martial art practitioners. Thus, it was impossible for them to bear Zen's attacks if he did. The impact of the shockwave turned the faces of the noisy men from Bamboo Leaf Sect pale and green, and they couldn't help but fearfully grit their teeth and scream. The green pallor of their skin didn't fade until Zen retracted the shockwave back. However, their faces still looked drained of color. They now realized that the young man in front of them was not a person to be trifled with. After a while, Zen slightly touched his finger and procured a cubic crystal from his space ring. Then, he threw it on the table and ordered, "Tell me where's the Dragon Valley of Cloudy Mountain now?" The group leader nervously glanced at the cubic crystal on the table and knew that he had no choice but to accept it, and tell Zen the address of Dragon Valley. Small beads of sweat had formed on his temples before he spoke carefully. Cloudy Mountain is not big. In fact, it's rather small. You may reach it after getting out the north gate of G County and walking about 20 miles along the National Road. Dragon Valley is located on the side of Cloudy Mountain. You'll see a bamboo forest when you climb up Cloudy Mountain. After bypassing the bamboo forest, you'll find a deep pool. Behind it is Dragon Valley, he finished. After all, Dragon Valley was their former base, so the leader told Zen about its location quickly even when he was extremely nervous. After that, Zen patted him jovially on the shoulder and said, "Good job. This cubic crystal belongs to you now." He then paid for his meal and walked downstairs. He decided that he must pay a visit to Dragon Valley. As soon as Zen left, the noisy group's leader slumped on his chair. All his courage went down the drain now. "These jerks," he cursed. Another disciple of the bamboo leaf sect who stood beside him couldn't agree more. "He's not only incredible in power, but also in generosity. I didn't expect that we'd get another cubic crystal so easily." Chapter 133, So Huge. Just as the big man instructed, Zen walked 20 miles on the main road after exiting the north gate of G County. Considering his speed, Zen finished the 20 miles instantly. And then, he saw a path which led to a small mountain not far from where he was standing. This would be Cloudy Mountain. Sure enough, just as the big man had said, Cloudy Mountain was small in size and not famous. There were several similar mountains all over, and probably few people in G County knew about it. After Zen climbed to the top of the mountain, he saw a bamboo forest on the side. Following the instructions given by the big man, Zen entered the forest. Almost immediately he heard the sound of water. When he looked around, Zen saw several small streams flowing down from the mountain and gathering in a pool. Dragon Valley must be just after this pool. I wonder what secret is hidden in the valley. Zen walked along the edge of the pool. Suddenly two voices came from the front. "Who dares to come here?" Zen didn't get a chance to reply. The question was followed by the sound of something flying through the air. An instant later, Zen saw two flying axes spinning toward him at high speed. Zen was not expecting hostility as soon as he entered the forest. However, his reflexes were quick. In the blink of an eye, Zen pulled out his broken flying knife and launched it at the axes. The broken flying knife made an arc in the sky as it cut through both of the axes. With a small smile, Zen then peered through the dense forest for the people who had thrown the axes. Soon he saw two men standing not far away with axes in their hands. They walked closer to Zen as they spoke. "We are from the Yu clan. You are not allowed to come here. Leave quickly." "What if I don't leave?" Zen sneered. When at White Emperor City, he didn't suffer the autocratic style of the top 7 noble clans. So why would he listen to these people? "You are courting death. We will cut you like a human stick and plant you in the bamboo forest to warn others, in case someone else decides to break in." The two didn't give Zen a chance to reply. Instead, they rushed to him with the flying axes held firmly in their hands. When they were about 3 feet away from Zen, they threw their axes, aiming for Zen's arms and legs. They were truly going to cut his arms and legs to make him like a human stick. Although the 4 flying axes were thrown at the same time, they arrived one after another. Zen waved his right hand, and the energy emitted from the phoenix crystal on his arm spread through him. His arm moved swiftly. He caught a spinning flying axe with his bare hand. What was more, when Zen caught the flying axe, he was able to launch it back at the 2 guards. In an instant, he had caught and returned each of the 4 axes in succession. When seen from a distance, it appeared as though Zen had deflected the path of the axes. However, he had caught them one after another and then thrown each back. The effect of the phoenix crystal was surprising. Usually, people would place a phoenix crystal in their weapon. However, Zen could inlay it in his body. The 2 people from the Yu clan were astonished to see that Zen had caught and thrown their flying axes back so skillfully. The 2 brothers were guards employed by the Yu clan. They had practiced with the flying axe for dozens of years before being able to reach the stage where they could throw it over long distances and with high speed. Even they didn't dare to catch a flying axe once they had thrown it. But this young man had caught their axes. How could that be possible? Zen didn't give them a chance to think about this question. As soon as he had flung the last axe, Zen rushed toward the 2 guards. As he moved, Zen extracted the energy of the phoenix crystal and quickly spread it all over his body through the meridians. Then he felt as though his body was much lighter, like a leaf. Having enhanced his strength, Zen's figure shot toward the guards like a ghost. When the guards saw that Zen had caught their flying axes with one hand, they realized that he was not an ordinary person. They stopped to observe his movements carefully. As soon as they detected that Zen was rushing at them, they took out 2 more axes and aimed for his head. Zen didn't give them a chance to swing their axes. When flying past, Zen's broken flying knife mirrored his movements. Soon, one of the guards stood still with a shocked expression as a thin blood line grew on his neck. At the same time, Zen spun his body, and the broken flying knife copied the movement. The second guard's neck happened to be on the path of the broken flying knife. After the broken flying knife flew past, a cut on the guard's neck could be seen. He had killed the 2 guards of the Yu clan in an instant. Zen put away the broken flying knife and walked past the bodies of the 2 guards. The big man had shared that Dragon Valley was the base of the bamboo leaf sect. In the valley, all kinds of weapons and liquor jars were placed at random, and some wooden houses had been built for them to live in. As Zen walked around Dragon Valley, he didn't encounter any more people. It was strange that the only people he had seen so far were the 2 guards. This is weird. Since members of the top 7 noble clans have come here, it is impossible that the valley would be guarded by only 2 people from the Yu clan. Where are the other people? Does the Dragon Valley have another passage? Zen frowned and looked around. At the same time, he walked around the valley. At last, Zen discovered many footprints on the ground of the valley. He raised his head and looked ahead. There was no passage in front. All Zen saw was 3 bamboos growing along the valley wall. It was strange that these footprints led to the 3 bamboos. Zen frowned and studied the 3 bamboos. The main root of each was as wide as the mouth of a bowl. Considering their size, these bamboos had been growing for many years. However, the bamboo in the middle was cut, and only half was left. When Zen observed the middle bamboo, he realized that it had been cut recently. Zen thought for a while and then reached out to touch the broken bamboo. A frown appeared on Zen's face. After touching the bamboo, he discovered that the broken bamboo was a virtual shadow. Magic array. Zen realized that a magic array had been placed here. On further thought, Zen figured that he could enter the array by cutting the bamboo. The members of the bamboo leaf sect had settled in the forest many years ago, and yet they had not discovered the array. Perhaps the entrance remained a secret as nobody had tried to cut the bamboo in the middle. It became obvious to Zen that perhaps members of the top 7 noble clans had cut the bamboo, started the magic array, and opened the entrance. Zen prepared to enter the array. However, a thought stopped him. After a little hesitation, Zen pulled out a mask from the ring. He didn't fear members of the top 7 noble clans, but he used the mask to avoid unnecessary trouble. After he left Sea County, Zen realized the importance of family background. It wasn't long ago that Zen had offended Chad. Ever since that incident, many members of the Zug clan had made it their mission to target Zen. It could be imagined that Zug clan would continue to bring him trouble from time to time. Using a mask would hence avoid such incidents. After wearing the mask, Zen followed the footprints into the array. Zen was not unfamiliar with magic arrays. When entering Cloud Sect, he had experienced the magic array on the Bloody Mountain. When he crossed the 3 bamboos, Zen felt that the sky and earth were spinning. When everything settled, the scene before his eyes was different. There seemed to be a weird space behind the mountain wall. Even though Zen had been prepared, he still felt stunned. Where am I? Before Zen's eyes stood a boundless forest. When seeing from a distance, he couldn't notice the difference. However, when he moved closer, every tree in the forest was over 100 times bigger than that he had seen. Even the grass in the forest grew to abnormal heights. The grass towered over Zen as though it were trees. Zen stood under their stumps and felt as tiny as an ant. Standing on the stump, Zen noticed that it extended dozens of feet in both directions. He couldn't see the whole tree. Is this really a magic array? Zen had doubts. If this were not a magic array, where was he? Where in the world would one find such huge plants? No matter where it was, Zen was sure that he was no longer in the eastern region. What surprised Zen more was that there was a huge pink enchanted barrier in the sky, which covered a range of 100 miles. This enchanted barrier was probably thousands of feet high and hundreds of miles long. Zen wondered what level of power a person must have to be able to make such a considerable-sized enchanted barrier. The edge of the pink enchanted barrier closest to Zen was behind the entrance. Zen approached the pink enchanted barrier slowly. As he neared, Zen felt it emit terrifying energy. The energy of the emerald crystal claims to be able to break any enchanted barrier. Will it be effective against this pink one? Zen was curious. Since Zen felt that the energy spreading from the pink enchanted barrier was extremely dangerous, he stayed at a safe distance from the enchantment. Then he released the energy of the emerald crystal on his arm, which extended to the enchantment cautiously. When the energy of the emerald crystal touched the pink enchantment, a tiny bolt of lightning shot out from the enchantment. Crack! The lightning swallowed the energy of the emerald crystal in an instant. The tiny lightning looked ordinary, but it still frightened Zen as he could see that he would die if hit by the lightning. In fact, his whole body would be consumed by the lightning, and there would be nothing left to bury. Zen gulped at the thought. Till now, he hadn't come across a person who could overwhelm him to this extent. Besides, the pink enchantment wasn't alive. Despite the fact that it spread over a great distance, the enchantment still maintained a lot of power. Zen wondered if a legendary celestial being had made the enchanted barrier. Zen wanted to try his demonic life energy at the beginning, but now he decided against the thought. It appeared that the enchantment wouldn't attack people, and so he chose not to provoke it. After all, if the lightning did strike him, Zen would suffer a painful death. As Zen prepared to leave the edge of the enchantment, a creature appeared from outside the enchantment. It was a tiger, a white tiger. Had it been an ordinary tiger, Zen wouldn't be afraid. Not even if there had been thousands of them. But this white tiger was different. This tiger was hundreds of feet tall. Standing before it, Zen felt as tiny as an ant. Chapter 134, The Bright Fairy Palace. When the white tiger climbed out from the woods outside the pink enchanted barrier, it saw Zen. It sneaked up to Zen with its big yellow eyes like a predator who found its prey. Roar! The white tiger roared. It was so loud that it could wake up the dead. The tranquility of the forest was disturbed. Strange animals ran wild. A flock of birds was flying, beasts were running wildly. The sound of the tiger's roar caused a vast wind as fierce as a tornado. This was no exaggeration. The strong wind passed through the pink enchanted barrier without resistance. It lifted Zen up in the air and crashed him hard into a tree not far away. Clash! The wind hit Zen's body like a punch from an illuminating soul realm master. His body was carved into the tree and he was unable to move. He coughed out some blood and his face looked helpless. It was a good thing that he hit a soft trunk instead of hard rock. If it was the latter, he could have died in an instant. Where is this place? Where are all these strange things coming from? Gasped Zen. It took him a little rest before he could move his body. He tried to pull himself out the trunk, but it was painful. Luckily, his body was as hard as a spiritual weapon that could withstand any tremendous impact. When he finally got out from the tree hole, he saw the white tiger still waiting for him outside the enchanted barrier like a predator ready to hunt. When the white tiger sensed a slight movement, it raised its head with heightened alert. Zen quickly hid into the tree hole. But this time, the tiger didn't roar and rushed directly to Zen. The white tiger dashed towards the pink enchanted barrier. Zen blinked his eyes and prepared himself for anything that could happen. If the enchanted barrier could not stop the white tiger, then it would be the end of him. Just when the tiger got in contact with the pink enchanted barrier, a spark came out from the surface. Soon, a bolt of lightning enveloped the white tiger. Little by little, the white tiger's body started to perish. It started with its fur, then its flesh and blood, and finally its skeleton until nothing was left. When the beast disappeared, a huge demon core fell on the ground with a loud bang. One could only imagine how heavy it was. It was indeed a massive demon core. The demon core was radiating a fantastic glow. A stream of energy was trapped in it that contained an infinite power that Zen didn't know of yet. If the energy in this demon core is released, it could destroy the whole eastern region. This was all Zen could think of now. I wonder how much I can make for it if I sell it in the eastern region market, Zen sighed as he looked at the demon core lying outside the pink enchanted barrier. He squatted by the edge of the pink enchanted barrier admiring the demon core. It was lying in front of him, but he just couldn't get it. For one, it was too big for his space ring. And if not for its size, Zen could still not get it because of the pink enchanted barrier. It was a line that no one dared to cross. He had seen what happened to that white tiger that tried to pass through the enchantment. Even for a half step into the nature-level human like him, there was no chance he could survive it if he tried. He could only shake his head in frustration. There was nothing he could do at this moment because he wasn't strong enough. On the second thought, this was surely a magical place. But where was this place exactly? And where did that tremendous creature come from? Good thing that the pink enchantment protected him. He could not imagine the disaster if the white tiger got into the eastern region. Could the emperor of the Burning Sky Empire and the head of the Cloud Sect survive? No one knew for sure. Zen was lost in his thoughts for a while but soon realized that he couldn't just wander around. He had to stay focused so he could find his way out. The strange forest was big, and Zen felt like an ant as he explored his way out. Aside from the tall and sturdy trees, there was not even a shadow of other creatures in the forest. This was because the pink enchanted barrier was keeping them out. Zen thought that if there was a strange creature, even a worm, his life would be at grave danger. In the middle of the vast forest, Zen found a road as wide as 1,000 feet. From its width, he could tell that it was made for something else and not for a human to walk on it. Zen guessed that it was made especially for giants, which were 1,000 of his size. Zen followed the forest path and ran at full speed for an hour until he saw a colorful fairy palace. The fairy palace was a feast for the eyes. The buildings and pavilions were filled with luxurious ornaments and displays. It radiated mysterious lights of the 7 colors that never existed in the human world. The fairy palace was in the middle of the pink enchanted barrier. At the center of the fairy palace was a pink ray rising to the sky where it spread throughout the place that formed like a pink curtain. Oh, so that's where the pink enchanted barrier comes from. I wonder who the master of this wonderful fairy palace is. Maybe a fairy built this place, Zen thought. The only fairy he could think of was from the legend. But he wasn't sure because he had never met the legendary fairy. What could be the message that Chase left in the weapon refining principle? And what does it have to do with this palace? Zen was lost in his thoughts again as he walked towards the palace. He arrived at the gate of the fairy palace and was more amazed than before. The gate was at least 5,000 feet high and colorful stones were embedded on it. He started to imagine how tall the fairy palace master could be. The gate of the fairy palace was open. Zen looked at it and saw a 3-floor high threshold. He walked towards the edge of the threshold and leapt upward. Soon he was flying across the threshold like a sparrow hawk. As he jumped across the threshold, he saw dozens of people standing at the gate, all dressed elegantly. Zen knew that these people were all from the top 7 noble clans. They all looked tensed as if watching something important. But Zen attracted their attention with his loud entrance and lousy appearance. Hey, what's going on? I thought we kicked all of them out. I told you, we should have killed all the people from the bamboo leaf sect to save them from passing. Hey, the Huang clan wouldn't do such deceitful thing. Everyone knows what we are doing but we could only care less. No one will dare to fight us, one of them said. A long-haired woman from the crowd glanced at Zen and subtly said, Eve, kill that guy. Cut off his head and hang him in the Dragon Valley. He should be a reminder that those who break in will face death. Eve stepped forward from the crowd with a weird smile on his face. He slowly took out a dagger hanging on his waist and flipped it in his hand. Eve's dagger had a snake-like blade and was longer than General One's. As he walked towards Zen, life vitality suddenly gathered under his feet and soon turned to black fog. Dang, that black fog again, sneered Zen. The top 7 noble clan men were irrational and tyrannical, and they would kill people as they wished. Zen was familiar with their temper as he had faced some of them before. These clansmen were superior and would deal fairly and reasonably only with the top 7 noble clans. The lives of the other people outside the 7 noble clans meant nothing to them, and they would kill them whenever they pleased. With these in mind, Zen had thought of the only way to deal with them, that was to kill all of them. Kill them all until they could feel fear. The life vitality could be changed depending on its owner. For most killers, they turned their life vitality into black fog. Zen had encountered this form twice already. The first time was his battle with the black and white fiends. The black fog produced by the black fiend did not harm him at all. He captured the black fiend with his strong soul and killed him in an instant. The second time was when he challenged Demon King Aldrich's holy fire. It was more powerful than the black fiend's black fog. The demon's holy fire could isolate the spirit, block the sight, and corrode everything in its way. Zen could tell from Eve, looks that he was an assassin. He assessed that Eve black fog could be stronger than the black and white fiends. But it didn't matter to Zen because he was determined to put an end to this. Zen stood still with his back against the high threshold and watched Eve. As Eve came closer to his prey, the black fog diffused and surrounded Zen. As soon as the black fog covered Zen's sight, Eve quickly made his move. Eve stirred the black fog like a weightless wind, and it rolled over repeatedly. Zen stood still with his arms crossed and the broken flying knife in his hand. He focused his gaze now on the rolling black fog, anticipating an attack. "What's your name?" A soft voice came through the black fog. Eve was a man, but he sure had a sissy voice. Upon hearing Eve's voice, Zen frowned and said, "Let's cut the talking. Isn't killing what noble clans like you want? So why do you want to know my name?" "Oh, don't get me wrong. This has nothing to do with the clan I represent. It's my rule to know the name of the person I will kill. As a ritual, you know. I have killed a total of 461 people since I served the Pei clan, and I can still remember all the names of the people I have killed," said Eve. Zen could not see his face through the black fog but could hear his voice. "You don't need to know my name," he said indifferently. "Why is that?" asked Eve in a confident manner. "Knowing my name won't be any use for you because you'll be the one to die," Zen said coldly but inconfident. Chapter 135, Interesting Boy. Eve stood stock still in the smog when suddenly a peal of sharp laughter rang out of him. He sounded like a doxy. "Ah ha ha, nobody has dared to speak to me in this manner since long ago. A youngling just half stepped into the nature level, saying this to me. Hilarious. If you don't tell me your name this instant, I will cut you 1,000 times. I will carve out 1,000 pieces of flesh from your body. Would you tell me then?" The black fog rolled over Zen once again, and suddenly, he sensed a fierce killing aim at his back that would rush straight to his heart. Zen's soul was exceptional. Some powerful men of the illuminating soul realm could not be left standing as his opponent. Eve was just a nature creature. Zen discerned his opponent's position easily, perceiving from the killing aim that Eve was coming up with behind him. Zen made a show of facing the front, as though confronting a formidable enemy there. He intentionally tried to trick Eve into thinking he had made a mistake as he prepared to strike his opponent once attacked from behind. Die. Zen felt the killing aim at his back grow even stronger. He figured that Eve was close at hand, so he waved the broken flying blade, showing Eve the back of his hand. Poof. Zen felt the blade hit someone and assumed its razor-sharp edge had stabbed Eve. In an instant, another person materialized in front of Zen. It was Eve. Ah ha ha. Appearing out of nowhere, Eve lifted his snake-shaped dagger to cut at Zen's chest before retreating into the black fog. He roared with laughter. "You are only half a step into the nature level, but your reflexes have impressed me. You are competent, but your strength is not enough. Just half a step into the nature level. Your understanding of the life vitality is not yet profound." Zen stood shrouded in the black fog, his brows raised with worry. It was strange. He had definitely sensed someone behind him, and his intuition told him that it had undoubtedly been Eve. Zen cut him with the broken flying blade, so how could he appear before him the very next moment? What was going on? But Eve didn't leave Zen much time to ponder over this question. With Zen lost in thought, the black fog rolled again. "Aha, you can't figure it out. Rest assured. There have been many like you who couldn't unravel the mystery. They have already met the Grim Reaper." The sharp voice barked out. Zen felt the killing aim on his left. "This time it's on my left." As soon as the thought came to him, he diverted his attention. He waved the broken flying blade on his right in a fierce blow. "It is on the right." Poof. Zen's blade hit Eve once again. However, when Zen pulled it back, he didn't see any fresh blood on the edge. He furrowed his brows, a sense of foreboding looming over him. "I was wrong. It was at the back." Stab. Zen's back was cut sharply and he cried out. The snake-shaped dagger tore at his skin as hot blood welled up. Eve had struck him hard, and Zen's flesh was lacerated. What just happened? Was this an illusion? Zen had sensed the presence of a figure on his left, and then immediately thought that someone was on his right, and it should be just Eve. How did the two of them disappear in the blink of an eye, while in the end, Eve attacked him from behind? Bemused, Zen wondered if Eve was not one person but two or even three of them together. But Eve had been alone when he walked over to Zen just now. From where did two more appear? What was strange was that the two of them were cut by Zen's blade, but seemingly nothing had happened to them. He heard no cries of agony or sounds of them falling to the ground. "Ah-ha-ha. Tell me your name, youngling. If you tell me, I will make your death come a little faster. What's the point in suffering the pain of being cut 1,000 times? You can imagine how you'll feel when my snake-shaped dagger slits into your flesh with every lash." "Eve," voice rang in the air. There is something wrong, Zen thought to himself. It must be Eve alone. The 7 noble clans had found out in their own ways that Zen was only half a step into the nature level. He was not even worth mentioning in their eyes, so why would they send several others to take him on? There was only one person here, Eve. So the two people who appeared on his left and right just now. Comprehension dawned on him in a flash, as if he was struck by lightning. Don't brag, Zen sneered. You really think you'll get the chance to cut me 1,000 times? Why won't I get the chance? You've already been cut by me twice. Only 998 slashes are left. I have plenty of time to play with you. As Eve finished talking, the black fog rolled forward again. It appeared he would launch a third attack at Zen. This time, Zen stood there blankly and waited for Eve to approach him. Eve had a special plan of attack, and it always swung in his favor. This time, however, he had encountered Zen. Zen's intuition sensed everything. He felt the same killing aim come from his left, front, as well as from the back. As I expected, you plan to attack me from the front this time. Zen suddenly dashed forward, and the broken flying blade hit the person on his front for the third time. When it hit Eve, Zen made a circular motion with his finger, and a dark purple demonic life energy surged in the air. The dark purple demonic life energy was obscure and had a similar color to the black fog conjured by Eve. Unless one really looked at it, one would miss it. The demonic life energy unfurled in the winds, unleashing itself from its constraints like sweeping riffles in a river. When the energy touched the black fog, Zen smacked his head lightly as if rebuking himself. He shouted, "Alas, I guessed wrong. It isn't in the front. It must be at the back." Poof! Energy escaped from the phoenix crystal on Zen's right arm and his speed increased to a realm of horror. In the blink of an eye, he had cut the figure behind him more than 30 times. Zen slashed the blade too quickly, so he didn't hear Eve's screeches until he pulled back. Zen wielded the blade again but didn't kill Eve. He slashed 30 times within moments and chopped off Eve's arms and legs. He could have cut Eve into pieces by hacking him with his broken flying blade, but he didn't go that far. Zen swept the black fog aside and trotted to Eve. Looking at the effeminate man, he asked coldly, "Do you still want to know my name?" "How did you find me?" Eve screamed. "Are you very curious?" Zen asked with a wry smile. Eve's face was contorted in severe pain. "Tell me. Go to if you wish to find the answer." After Zen spoke, the broken flying blade in his hand hurled into the air to stab Eve in the neck before shooting to the ground. Zen snapped his thumb and the blade flew back to him. In the beginning, Zen had been misled. Man's life vitality was wonderful and varied. Eve's fighting ways had truly astonished him. In truth, from the beginning to the end, Eve had been fighting against Zen alone. It was not the black fog that was a creation of his life vitality. The black fog before Zen's eyes was nothing but a deceptive trick meaning to fool him. It must have been made to morph out of something else. Eve's own life vitality turned into himself. A human's life vitality could turn into lotuses, as was the case with Vale. Somebody else could morph it into an enchanted barrier, as Yolanda did. But Eve's life vitality had transformed into himself. The person Zen had stabbed in the beginning was an illusion made out of Eve's life vitality. When Eve attacked the first time, he turned his own life vitality into 2 false dummies. He followed this plan of attack with Zen at the second time, and when he hurled it for the third time, Zen saw right through it and realized a solution. While Eve fabricated an illusion of 3 fake opponents to attack him, Zen unfurled the demonic life energy in his body. It could devour another's life vitality. Zen figured that the counterfeit Eve in his front, on his left and on his right would be swallowed by his own demonic life energy. The 3 of them were illusions created with Eve's life vitality, while the real Eve attacked him from behind. After perceiving thus, Zen had decisively launched the attack at his back. The black fog disappeared slowly after he killed Eve. Dozens of people from the 7 noble clans had watched Eve attack Zen before the fog enveloped the 2 of them, assuming that it would be an easy kill. According to them, Eve was more than capable to take on the young man who had suddenly broken in. Like a moth flying into a spider web mistakenly, Eve only had to reach out and pick him from the web before squeezing him to death. As the black fog ebbed away to reveal Zen, one of the members of the noble clans glanced at the scene casually before gasping in surprise. "Well, Eve is dead." The long-haired woman also turned to stare at Zen, her brows wrinkled and lips twisted. "Quite interesting. He managed to kill Eve. It appears I've underestimated him. He's only half a step into the nature level. With that level of strength, he could take Eve's life. Interesting boy," someone else said. Zen didn't approach them after making the kill, instead, he turned to make a detour from the side. However, at the same moment, the long-haired woman spoke out loud in a firm voice. "Who on earth are you?" Zen stared at her, beady-eyed. Who am I? That's got nothing to do with you. Don't bother frightening me with your names and titles. It's of no use. I want nothing to do with the noble clans. We go our own way without interfering with each other. The long-haired woman hollered with laughter at his words. How naive of you to say that. Zen swept the flying blade horizontally across his chest. I don't know if I am naive, but anyone who dares to cross me will die, just like this one lying on the ground. He motioned at Eve with his foot. Zen seemed to have no scruple about the 7 noble clans. They looked on in shock. Several of them emanated dangerous energies about them. If they really wanted to fight Zen, he would have no choice but to flee for his life. However, Zen had seen what was in the weapon refining principle, and he was not a fool. There was a great chance for the impossible to occur in this world, as well as in this fairy palace. He had no reason to shrink back. Ha ha ha, ha ha. The members of the top 7 noble clans stared at him and burst into raucous laughter, as if Zen had just made a joke. Chapter 136, Giant Puppets. Eve was a negligible sacrifice for the Pei clan. Zen had only managed to kill Eve, whose skills in the martial arts were considered to be the worst among these people from the noble clans. The fact that he was conceited enough to say he would kill anyone who crossed his path was absurd. Laughter rang endlessly until the long-haired woman finally said, Leon, kill the boy. Don't let me down. He killed Eve, so evidently, there's something strange about him. Just pay attention. Eve had been at the 6th grade of nature level, but Leon was at the 8th, which meant that the latter had more power. Zen had killed Eve, who wasn't powerful enough. It incurred less contempt and wariness from the members of the noble clans. They thought that Zen only managed to kill one of their kin because he had been lucky. But Leon Yi was a lot stronger. They told themselves that Zen was only half a step into the nature level. His good luck could not make up for the strength gap between him and Leon. According to the nobles, he was bound to be killed. However, there were several of them sneaking interested glances at him. They were confused as to how this masked boy could kill Eve. At the order from the long-haired woman, Leon rushed to Zen languidly. Leon was different from Eve, the latter an unqualified assassin who talked too much. On the contrary, Leon Yi was quiet and serious. He didn't underestimate any of his opponents. The masked boy might only be half a step into the nature level, but Leon would treat him as he would be a real enemy. He would not give the boy a chance to fight back. Sure, Zen grew exasperated. None of the people listened to him. They just belittled and ignored him no matter what he did, whether he threatened, begged for mercy, or said anything else. The only way to make them believe was to kill them. Only then would they understand that he wasn't to be trifled with and that they could not intimidate him. Leon approached Zen strangely, keeping his intense eyes locked on his. The life vitality in his hands quickly morphed into 2 long green swords. Just about a dozen of feet away from Zen, Leon's movements turned peculiar. It confused everyone present as to why he was circling behind Zen, when his swords were about to stab the boy in the chest. When Zen turned around, Leon leapt over him. His swords were brandished around his opponent, caging Zen and giving him no chance to escape. Death in all directions. The motions of Leon's green swords seemed disorganized, but he had successfully sealed all ways for Zen to retreat. Leon, a man who never took things lightly, conjectured that Zen was doomed to die today. No one so far had survived death in all directions. But as Leon swooped down on Zen with his pair of swords, he felt a sudden trickle of fear as he looked into his rival's eyes. In the past, he had only seen dread, despair, or utter helplessness in his opponent's gaze. This young man was different. His eyes twinkled with something akin to indifference and apathy, as if he didn't have a care about life and death. They lacked fear and seared him with a sense of calmness, and it led Leon to wrongly believe that the masked boy would not move an inch to fight him back, rather, he would die an unsung, cornered hero. Don't think foolishly, just kill the guy. He is surrounded by death in all directions. He will die, no matter how he acts now. In his heart, Leon managed to persuade himself of this. However, as he got close to Zen, the latter smiled at him faintly. A sharp, yellow thorn took shape between his eyebrows and dashed out. Spiritual thorn. Leon felt sharp pain shoot through him, unbearably bitter. In severe pain, Leon couldn't concentrate on the fight for too long. The 2 green swords created out of his life vitality vanished into thin air. Before Leon could figure out what had happened, a flying broken blade pierced into his forehead and gashed down through the rest of his body. Warriors only got one chance to win a battle, so how could Zen let go of it? He killed Leon timely. Dong. Leon, a victim to the flying broken blade, fell to the ground lifelessly, an inanimate body torn into sharp edges. Goodness, it can't be true. Leon has been killed. The kid is a menace. A few of them had been paying attention and noticed that Leon used death in all directions to attack Zen. He had been inexplicably suspended for a while, and the next thing they saw, the masked boy's flying broken blade had slashed right through him. It was all so strange. Leon was a well-known master, while Zen's flying blade was nothing special in front of him. Why didn't Leon avoid it? Why did he wait foolishly for the broken blade to kill him? Instantly, some of them realized that Zen was not to be trifled with. He was no easy rival. So what if he was only half a step into the nature level? That had to be misleading. The Pei clan had already sacrificed 2 of their members at the steep price of their own ignorance. The long-haired woman frowned even as her eyes blazed. We, the Pei clan, will not send anyone else to fight. Who will come forward to kill him? I volunteer. I have rarely seen such a tenacious young man. Let me give it a try. The man who spoke was old and holding a dragon-shaped cane in his hand. He welted his cane on the ground several times and life vitality gushed out, igniting with a fierce flame. The old man was at the level of the illuminating soul realm. Taking note of the eagerness in the man's words, the long-haired woman smiled ominously. Mr. Huang, she said, it is deplorable to ask you, a master of the illuminating soul realm, to fight this weak young man who's only half a step into the nature level. It's nothing. I, Wilson Huang, never discriminate against anyone. This masked man's abilities are indeed strange. He slaughtered 2 members of the Pei clan in a row like they were just lambs, which means that either he is quite powerful or just very lucky. I'll have to teach him a lesson personally. Wilson tightened his grip on his cane, ready to fight Zen. Zen ran his gaze on the figure of the old man and his cane, cautious now that he knew he was a master of the illuminating soul realm. The elder was obviously leagues ahead of Zen. He was aware that last time, Hugh had been narrowly killed by his heavenly ogre fist. That was only because he had made a foolish mistake, giving Zen a chance to secure his victory. If a master of the illuminating soul realm played his cards right, Zen would have no chance against him. Confronted with a master, Zen had no choice but to flee. But before he could begin to make his escape, a tremor reverberated in the fairy palace. The expression on the long-haired woman's face turned to stone. Mr. Huang, give us a minute. There is something far more important to deal with. Wilson, who had suddenly grown cautious as he ambled over to Zen, nodded in reply. All right, as you say. Seems there's something more urgent. He lifted his chin at Zen. As for your life, boy, it will be a piece of cake for me to kill you so long as you're in the fairy palace. The force of the tremors became stronger and stronger, as if an earthquake had hit them. Soon after, a lightning leopard climbed over the huge square at the gates of the fairy palace, dashing quickly in their direction. The speed of the lightning leopard was as quick as that of lightning. It was the fastest beast in the eastern region. Many people admired the beast's awe-inspiring speed and were keen on paying a hefty price to keep it as a pet or spirit animal in their homes. The lightning leopard must belong to one of the noble clans, but why was the ground quivering? With his gaze locked on the arch of the fairy palace, Zen grew wary. The leopard sprinted through the arch, and soon, 2 giants were seen with maces in their hands, hastening after it. The giants were like puppets without any vitality of their own. In the eastern region, there were many creative and skilled craftsmen who could make sturdy puppets. But no one could make such lifelike puppets who looked akin to real people. Not to mention, the 2 puppets were like sky-high mountains, about hundreds of meters in height. The ground vibrated heavily as they scampered forward. Every time the ground shook, Zen and the other people were propelled up into the air. They fell to the ground intermittently as the puppets made their way. Fortunately, everyone present here, including Zen, belonged to higher levels. They could have been killed by the mere tremors if they were ordinary people. Compared to the 2 giant puppets, the running lightning leopard looked like a small ant slithering forward. Pung! One of the giant puppets hurled the mace in his hand toward the lightning leopard. The lightning leopard was on the ball. As the huge mace was tossed forward for a hit, the leopard dashed forward like a flash of lightning and evaded the terrible thrash of the weapon. Complementing the stature of the giant puppets, the maces were as huge as half mountains. What would it be like to get struck by half a mountain? With the mace acting as the center of a wheel, suddenly a shaky ripple of the tremor, almost visible to the naked eye, pulsed on the ground. It was as horrible as the tsunami as it spread across the square. Goodness. My lightning leopard. If it gets caught in the shock wave, it would be killed. We wouldn't be able to get through the inner arch of the fairy palace. A man cried out, apparently worried about the lightning leopard he had raised. Chapter 137, The Black Wolf. The lightning leopard was fast but not as quick as the tremors that rocked the ground. If it got caught in the vibrations, it could turn into dust in an instant. The people stopped whispering. The long-haired woman, who stood in the center of the noble clan members, stretched out a hand. Her long hair was rolled out like waves. A pale blue light ball surged from her body, vanishing as soon as it had appeared. The very next moment, the blue light ball surfaced around the lightning leopard's body as a visible shield protecting it. When the tremors spread to its body, the ball of light dimmed a little, but it was apparent that it had devoured the power of the tremors. The lightning leopard was left unharmed as it ran, the two giant puppets hot on its heels. The tremors swept forward, drawing closer to the members of the 7 noble clans as well as Zen. Several of them scuttled to nooks and corners in an attempt to avoid them. The distance made the energy of the tremors easier to bear, but it was still beyond the endurance of the nature creatures. Only the long-haired woman, Wilson and 2 other powerful men of the illuminating soul realm stood unmoved like stones, letting the approaching tremors assault them. Zen also did not budge from the other side of the square. He sensed the tremor gushing toward him until it finally burst through his body, knocking through with an impact that nearly threw him over. The tremor was like a warm stream of water that rushed through his insides. It began to scour his belly roughly. At first, he tried to resist it but then stopped, sensing that he might be facing a breakthrough. Once his belly was scoured, it might help him reach the nature level. With this revelation in mind, Zen allowed the tremor to run through his insides even as it pained him. Unfortunately, after the tremor left him, he didn't feel any change in his belly. Zen twisted his lip in displeasure. The tremor had been of moderate intensity. If only it had persisted for a few more moments. Then his belly could have been scoured thoroughly. Not far away, the long-haired woman and the powerful men of the illuminating soul realm stood frozen as they watched the tremor pass over Zen's body. Did he want to die? He didn't move an inch as the tremor passed over him. Instead, he faced it as they had. They were sure that the tremor would turn him into dust. But as the tremor passed over, they saw that the masked boy didn't, in fact, turn to dust. He stood, staring ahead, his eyes twinkling with delight. The nature creatures hidden in the corners weren't witness to the scene and didn't know that Zen had stood fearless before the tremor. Shock was painted across the faces of the illuminating soul realm masters as they wondered what the boy's body was made of. How could he withstand such power? He was only half a step into the nature level. He couldn't transform his life vitality to protect himself. So how was he able to face the impact of the tremors? Such an unusual boy. If they didn't kill him, he would certainly rise to unbridled power and play tyrant one day. The powerful men of the illuminating soul realm were ruffled. Some of them had the intention to kill him some time ago, but now wasn't the time to practice their aim. The main goal of the 7 noble clans as of now was to enter the inner door of the fairy palace. The temptation of a palace of celestial beings was undeniable. During their explorations before, they had discovered that the 2 giant puppets who guarded the inner door attacked any and all who tried to break in. Previously, they had run into the 2 puppets. Several of their fellow comrades were caught off guard and killed with their maces. This time, however, the members of the 7 noble clans were well prepared. One of them had brought the lightning leopard that could outrun anybody. They planned to use the speed of the lightning leopard to provoke the 2 giant puppets. After it led them to the square, they would seize the chance to sneak into the inner door while the puppets chased the leopard busily. What they had not counted on was for the masked boy to appear out of nowhere. At first, the young man had seemed insignificant, so they sent Eve to kill him. However, it was Eve who got killed instead. Not only him, but the young man managed to deceive Leon too. They might not have gotten rid of the masked boy, but the lightning leopard had successfully led the 2 giant puppets to the square. This diverted their attention. No longer interested in killing the masked boy, the clans realized that they needed to act in haste and run to the inner door while the leopard kept the guards distracted. While the 7 noble clans were together in this mission, secretly, they still schemed against each other. There was a large amount of treasure in the fairy palace that would add to their riches if they could grab even one for the clan. It was the long-haired woman who rushed to the front foremost. Several masters of the illuminating soul realm followed her closely. The rest of the nature creatures too rushed to their side. Zen stood at the square and watched them, knowing what to do next. He followed the members of the clans with quick footsteps. They had been clever in tricking the two giant puppets. This was a great opportunity for Zen to enter the palace too. The masters of the illuminating soul realm noticed Zen following them and sneered. In order not to attract the attention of the giant puppets, they had left the masked young man behind for the moment. But apparently, he was insatiable. Shameless cretin, thought a few of the people. He dared follow them to enter the inner chambers. They had been planning to infiltrate the inner chambers for a long time now, and suddenly a boy appeared out of nowhere, wanting a share in their profit. It was unacceptable to them. Stop him. Tell him not to follow us. Just kill him, the long-haired woman said from between her teeth, her eyes blazing with anger. Wilson, who had been following the long-haired woman, ambled forward, wearing a disparaging smile on his face. His body was illuminated with bright yellow lights as he waved his hand. His life vitality surged forward and morphed into a few human figures, all as tall as him. Soon, they began to crawl on the ground, transforming into 3 khaki-colored aardwolves. Flames were set ablaze behind the aardwolves, a result of the burning life vitality. Go, kill that kid! Wilson roared in a deep voice. Under Wilson's direction, the 3 aardwolves turned around and darted towards Zen, their sharp teeth glinting against the flaming backdrop. The aardwolves pursued Zen, until finally they blocked him, coming to a standstill 3 feet away from him. The old guy's life vitality is the aardwolf. Zen gave a small smile and swiftly pulled the demonic life energy from his belly, gathering it in his right fist. This kind of life vitality avatar was his favorite. When the aardwolf in the front bolted over to him, he bent at the waist and punched it with his right fist. Ogres shaking the world, a dark purple shadow of a fist rushed out of his knuckle. With the aid of the phoenix crystal, the punch he threw was 10 times faster than before. The aardwolf was a lot more flexible than Hugh's 5-clawed golden dragon, but Zen's fist still packed a punch. Wilson was still running to the inner door. This square was only 100 steps, distance for the giant puppets, but that distance was like a dozen of miles to a small human. He kept up his speedy sprint even as he controlled his aardwolves. When he noticed Zen throwing a punch at the aardwolf, his lips twisted into a smirk. His life vitality was special. The aardwolves might look ordinary, but in fact, they could recover fully even when they were smashed to smithereens. It was a waste of effort on the boy's part to punch them with his fist. Soon, however, he found that he couldn't laugh. The smirk stilled on his lips, like the frost of late autumn. The aardwolf that Zen had punched blackened from head to toe. At the same time, Wilson sensed that he lost the ability to control it. What a strange power. How did this kid do it? Wilson watched him, stunned. How had the boy grabbed one of his life vitality avatars and turned it to black, effectively rendering it out of his control? He blinked his eyes in astonishment but consoled himself. It didn't matter. There were 2 more aardwolves left. He could kill the boy using them. Immediately, he waved his hand. The 2 aardwolves' life vitality was burning. The wolves scraped their claws on the ground with guided intention before howling loudly and darting to Zen. Their life vitality burned ablaze. Without fear, Zen manipulated the recently turned black wolf to fight them. The black wolf was made out of demonic life energy, which had devoured Wilson's life vitality. It circled the first aardwolf. The black wolf neared it and slashed at its body with its claws, transferring its demonic life energy. Soon, the aardwolf too was devoured by the demonic life energy and turned black. Zen could kill the other aardwolf, but when he raised his hand to use the heavenly ogre fist this time, a sudden thought struck him. Since the aardwolf could be swallowed by his demonic life energy and come under his control, would the phoenix crystal somehow strengthen its power? In an instant, he exerted the power of ogres shaking the world into his fist and punched the aardwolf, while also pushing the energy of the phoenix crystal into it. The aardwolf hit by Zen's heavenly ogre fist dropped to its knees and whined. In an instant, it changed colors. Now, it was a black wolf under Zen's control. What was different from the other 2 black wolves, however, was that this one had a faint, bright purple energy spilling through it. It was the energy of the phoenix crystal. Let's try the speed. Zen manipulated the black wolf, making it move with the energy of the phoenix crystal. Whoosh! The black wolf burst forward like lightning, its speed more than 10 times faster. The lightning leopard, claimed to be the fastest animal in the eastern region, could not hold up in the face of this black wolf. The members of the 7 noble clans came running to the inner door. They paled as they watched the scene in front of them, the color draining from their faces. Chapter 138. The Man-Eating Koi Fish. How'd it happen? Asked an expert in the illuminating soul realm. Wilson's face darkened with fury as he raved, I don't know. There's something off about him. He took my life vitality manifestations and strengthened one of the wolves, giving it an astonishing speed. I'll go back to finish him off. Shaking her head, which sent her abundant hair swinging back and forth, the lady objected, no, if you do it now, you will draw the attention of the two giant puppets, and all the time we've put in, our efforts would be a waste. We don't want that. So, we just let him follow us here? Asked one of the men, as he gave an angry look. We'll have plenty of time to get rid of him after we get in the inner doors. That isn't too difficult for us, is it? Snapped the long-haired woman with a sneer. The brat had easily killed even Leon. He had some unusual tricks. But, so what? He was nothing compared to the masters of the illuminating soul realm. Good, that's settled then. Mr. Huang, you and Seymour will kill him as soon as we are admitted into the inner sanctum, ordered the lady with the long hair. After reaching an agreement on how to proceed, they ignored Zen. The woman held out a hand, and dozens of incantations appeared in midair. A strong draft blew past them as the incantations darted to everyone's head. The incantations allowed people to move faster, making everyone's speed increase over 30%. The square stretched before them for dozens of miles, but, the companions reached the inner door in an instant because of how fast they were. Relieved they were finally within the inner doors, everyone let out a long sigh. The price of the trip had been a steep one with so many lives lost during the journey. A scowl was remained on Wilson's furious face as he thought about how he wanted to crush the masked boy with his bare hands. Well now, there's no need to wait since the boy wants to follow us. We'll just finish him here, commented the long-haired woman, almost giddy with excitement. Wilson snorted coldly, there are so many paths he could choose, but, he's demon bent on his ruin. But, since his wish is to perish, this place will be his tomb. Standing next to Wilson was a man dressed in a green robe. The man in green was an expert among those in the illuminating soul realm. His name was Seymour, and at that moment he was ready and waiting for his chance to settle a killing strike on the boy as well. These two experts from the illuminating soul realm would have been plenty to handle the boy, except this was the fairy palace. Due to the location, there were far too many variables to take for granted they would be victorious. Prudence demanded they avoid any more trouble. Moments later Zen came through the inner doors wearing a mask, with an enormous wolf walking alongside him. The wolf had been Wilson's two black wolves, until Zen merged them into one which was twice the size of the originals. Are you guys waiting for me? Asked Zen as he grinned. If I were you, I wouldn't be taking this so lightly. As a man half-step into the nature level, you should pride on your ability. Still you are not good enough to survive our attack, stated Wilson in a deep voice. For some inexplicable reason, his stomach knotted in apprehension when he saw the grin on the masked boy's face. He's bluffing. Cut the garbage and let's get this over, said Seymour sneering. Poised to strike, a green light covering his body began to blink. Hold up, announced Zen while he waved his hand. When he was sure he had their attention, his smile broadened and he said to Wilson, did you notice there's something I didn't bring with me? A puzzled look crossed Wilson's face as he stiffened. Wilson had witnessed Zen made 3 wolves under his control. If Wilson remembered correctly, there was a black wolf missing. Before passing through the inner door, the savage black wolf was also beside the masked boy, fiercer and faster than the wolves Wilson had summoned. We've journeyed with the same goal, and I for one, see no reason for us to turn against each other. You have noticed that I strengthened the black wolf, and then I left it outside. Your lightning leopard couldn't compare to the giant puppets, but, if you wish, I can use the black wolf and lure the giant puppets here. Now, I am guessing, no one wants that, right? Zen's voice was flat as he asked. Zen had used a phoenix crystal to strengthen the black wolf, and then left it by the large square on the other side of the doorway. Even though the wolf wasn't right next to Zen, it was still under his control, and with lightning speed it would be a simple matter to lure the giant puppets there. Since with one word from Zen, 2 giant puppets would be lured in and no one there would survive, the men stopped to think things through before laying a hand on Zen. You asked for it, shouted Wilson, his temper ignited by Zen's words. Such a clever boy, commented the woman with long hair, as she shot Zen a venomous look. Her beautiful eyes were murderously cold. I have to say, that's actually really smart. Normally, there isn't a place for a man who hasn't entered the nature level, but you've got a good point. If we don't cooperate, more trouble will plague us while we are at the fairy palace. Nodding, Zen's smile spread, widening to reveal a row of gleaming white teeth before he commented, "Yes, that's the spirit. It's not cool for us to fight with each other." Zen's speech left the crowd speechless, from those in the nature level to the experts of the illuminating soul realm, and made them wonder where this kid got the nerve to talk like that. Even in the face of terrifying dangers, Zen remained calm, allowing him to analyze the situation and counter possible attacks on him. Such order was admirable and frightening at the same time. Although the members from the top 7 noble clans were unhappy with this unexpected twist, scowling ungracefully, for now, they abandoned the original plan, since if they tried to kill Zen, they wouldn't stand a chance of surviving. That wasn't to say they'd accepted Zen as a teammate. It was all they could do to tolerate his presence, but, before dealing with Zen, they would have to check this place out. Between the outer and inner doors was an empty, yet huge square which they'd explored thoroughly. Behind the inner door things were vastly different. After going through the doorway, a path paved in jade crossing over a pond came into view. To an immortal in the fairy palace, it might be a pond, but it was more like a huge lake to Zen. A pill refining workshop, and a weapon refining workshop. Look, a scrolls pavilion, many of the greedy-eyed men screamed as they glanced around. Smack dab in the center of the long path was a small pavilion as tall as a mountain. Branching out from the jade path were 7 roads, each in a different direction, and leading to various refining workshops. Pills, weapons, just how many treasures were there? None of them could imagine. There was only one certainty, and that was they had found a treasure trove of things that would benefit them greatly. "Aha!" one of the illuminating soul realm experts exclaimed as he bolted like the wind in one direction. The fairy palace was fraught with so much danger that a tenuous coalition bound the top 7 noble clans together, but, now that they saw the treasures laid out before them, their alliance instantly crumbled. Each greedy man knew whoever reached it first would have the upper hand. Avarice turned their heads. Several members of the top 7 noble clans followed closely behind the first man. But, after a few hundred feet down the jade path, something strange happened to the first man. Ripples spread across the surface of the pond before a red koi fish rose from the water. Koi fish weren't a rarity to the noble clans who had numerous koi fish in their courtyard lakes. Common koi fish were 5-6 inches long, with some big ones reaching 10 inches. However, the koi fish swimming below was gigantic and measured far more than 100 feet long. At first, the fish calmly stared at the lead man, its eyes bulging. Suddenly, the koi fish flipped its tail above the surface, and in the next moment, it leapt at the man. There were no weak men in the illuminating soul realm. Add to that, this man, in particular, was a master in the illuminating soul realm with instinctively quick reflexes. He saw the shadow as it rose over his head and immediately looked up. All he saw though was something gigantic was rushing at him from above, and he summoned his life vitality in an attempt to dodge to one side. It was at that moment that the seemingly meek koi fish opened its mouth. Koi fish didn't usually have teeth, but this one had a mouth full of serrated teeth. It was a frightful scene watching the lovely koi fish transforming into such a hideous, creepy monster. After summoning his life vitality, he moved in a flash, making it impossible for the koi fish to bite him. When the fish missed, it rolled over on the path and plunged back into the water. Onlookers stood in their trackers, startled by the scene and visibly relaxed when the man dodged the koi's attack. The episode reminded them they needed to be on guard at the fairy palace. As the crowd collectively let out a sigh of relief, they heard splashing from every direction. Looking around, the group saw dozens of koi fish leaping through the air. The illuminating soul realm master panicked for a moment, unsure of what he should do in this situation. "Fly," shouted one of the many spectators, reminding him. When an initiate entered the illuminating soul realm, that person would be gifted the knowledge of how to burn life vitality to soar in the air. Given the courage, the illuminating realm master could get away from the koi fish, except, he hadn't been in a struggle to survive ever and his mind went blank with panic, like most of the noble clan men present. It was only after being reminded that he remembered, and with life vitality burning behind him, he shot straight up in the air. But his actions were too late. The dozens of koi fish slammed into him midair, and they all fell from the sky. He crashed into the path with those fish landing smack on top of him and blocking most of the road. All that could be heard were screams of pain from the man as those fish dropped down on him before diving back into the pond. When the chaos ended, nothing remained on the path except blood. The man's body was gone. Chapter 139, The 8 Diagrams. Although the jade-paved path looked peaceful and tranquil, it was actually a death trap in disguise. The crowd was aware of this, so they turned back hastily and fled. Luckily, they hadn't walked that far yet, so they got to retreat in an instant. However, 2 koi fish still managed to jump out and swallow 2 nature creatures among them. A frown was etched on Zen's face as he watched the pond and stood motionless on the shore. It couldn't be better for him if these noble people explored the path before him. It seemed that the fairy palace posed dangers far beyond their imagination. They thought that the fairy palace would be a safe place, since a large enchanted barrier was set up to isolate the giant beasts outside. If any of them broke in, the fairy palace would become a palace of monsters. However, nobody among them imagined that the koi fish would block their way and threaten their lives. The crowd still stood by the shore. Their eyes cast nervous looks at the pond, and saw the dense school of koi fish that swam towards the jade path. A rough estimate would say that there were probably thousands of the giant koi fishes in the waters, which was possible since the pond was as big as a lake. No matter what kind of creature crossed the jade path or even went near it, let alone fell into the pond, the koi fishes would jump out and instantly tear them up. They frustratedly looked at the pill refining and weapon refining workshops from a distance. Nobody was willing to return from a treasure trove empty-handed. The woman with long hair, Old Wilson, Seymour, and the other illuminating soul realm masters looked at each other meaningfully. After a little while, they all rose up high in the air by burning their life vitality. It was worth noting that the koi fishes could jump high as 1,000 feet. The shadows of the hovering illuminating soul realm masters reflected and rippled on the clear waters. Since they flew higher, the jumping fish couldn't reach them. However, they were all aware that even if they could avoid the koi fish's attacks, there might be other disasters waiting for them. Still, people under great temptation always risked their lives to seek out adventures. The greater risk they faced, the greater reward they would get. Besides, if they gave up now, all their previous efforts would just be wasted. The illuminating soul realm masters understood this and did not hesitate to fly towards a pavilion at the center of the pond. Unlike the nature creatures, the illuminating soul realm masters had the ability to fly. Thus, the nature creatures had no choice but to wait on the shore. Meanwhile, Zen stood beside the lot of nature creatures and thought about what measures could be taken. These koi fish were fanged, numerous in quantity, and huge in size. But no matter how large they were still fish. If the illuminating soul realm master who was previously eaten by the koi fishes chose to sprint at a high speed from the beginning, he might not be captured so easily. After all, the koi fish is a simple-minded animal. It can't think and judge like humans do. And, the jade path is not too long. I should be able to run through it in really swift velocity. Of course, it is too dangerous. But speaking of danger, are there no dangers awaiting those illuminating soul realm masters who flew over the pond? Life itself is a crisis. I'm not here for pleasure, he thought. With those beliefs in mind, Zen decided to venture out into the jade path. He stood at where the path began and took a deep breath. Then, he positioned himself into a sprint posture. Hushed whispers followed and many eyes were now fixed on him. What does he want to do? Is he crazy? Is he trying to run through the jade path? Brad was at Illuminating Soul Realm, and much stronger than him, but even he didn't make it. Maybe he signed his own death warrant. It would be better for him to die now. We're not gonna let him remain alive anyway. The nature creatures on the shore murmured among themselves. On one hand, they took delight in and wished that Zen would feed his body to the koi fish. On the other hand, they envied Zen's courage. After all, they didn't dare act like Zen, even though they were nature creatures. Schwaff. After one more deep breath, Zen darted out like an arrow shot from a longbow's taut string. A tremendous force surged from Zen's body as he awakened the cyan dragon with more than 100 glittering scales in his mind. Swish, swish, bam, bam. The moment Zen rushed forward, he heard the sound of the imminent fishes flapping of tails and splashes of water. Countless gigantic koi fishes leapt and bit at him, their mouths opened which exposed sharp teeth. Plop, plop, plop. However, all of the koi fishes were unsuccessful and fell back reluctantly into the water behind Zen. Meanwhile, whenever Zen felt that his strength slightly diminished, he would immediately mobilize dragon scales to refuel himself. The sight of Zen's unbelievable speed had the nature creatures on the shore stare at each other with agape mouths. It was true that a strong cultivator on a high rank of the nature level was not necessarily slower than Zen. They could also do what Zen could do. However, sometimes, courage was needed more than strength. They dared not dance in front of death, but Zen did. By now, Zen had passed smoothly through the first half of the jade path. At the second half, however, some koi fishes that awaited him from a distance jumped up in advance. Let's see what that boy will do. I'm sure he'll get eaten by the koi. Once again, the noble people talked haughtily among themselves and relished in telling each other about what miseries Zen would end up in. However, Zen still noticed the obstacles and hazards around him with his strong soul, even when he ran quite fast. As he neared the fish that waited for him along the way, Zen jumped up at a high altitude. The koi also jumped up from the jade path with a flick of their tails, and opened their mouths to bite Zen. Phoenix Crystal, Zen chanted. He had emitted energy from the Phoenix Crystal embedded in his right arm just in time for this critical moment. When he released the energy, he felt his body become lighter and his speed increased several more times. Now, the fishes out of the water were less agile and powerful, and thus Zen had successfully escaped. Finally, Zen hopped among the remaining koi carps in the last parts of the jade path. He finally got to the pavilion after a lot of threats, but he got out unscathed. The illuminating soul realm masters who had previously flown to the pavilion were shocked to see Zen when he rushed down the jade path. Old Wilson's hate-filled eyes looked repulsively at his approaching figure. The boy sticks to us like an annoying dog, he thought. Old Wilson's murderous glare did not escape Zen's eyes, but he simply shrugged his shoulders and said, "You know that my black wolf incarnated from life vitality is still fighting with the two giant puppets outside now. It's easy for me to bring them in." When she heard Zen's words, the long-haired woman yelled to Wilson, "Wilson, not now. We have more important things to do. Don't rock the boat, he's already here anyway." Old Wilson didn't say anything more. After he composed himself, Zen circled the huge pavilion, then realized why everyone stopped advancing at this place. It turned out that it was a special pavilion that only allowed anyone to enter, but not to leave. From the outside, the pavilion was huge, measuring at least tens of thousands of feet high. Except for its large size, its shape and form did not differ from those of an ordinary pavilion. Inside it, however, was a completely different scene. Only if one walked in would they find a pink-colored enchanted barrier which blocked the 8 exits of the pavilion. Perhaps some people had thought that as long as they entered the pavilion, they would be able to access their favorite treasure house. However, the pavilion was unexpectedly a cage that locked in everyone that would enter. In the center of the pavilion, there were huge 8 diagrams, around which 8 Chinese characters were written respectively. The 8 words in proper order were heaven, earth, thunder, wind, water, fire, mountain, and valley. At a glimpse of those 8 words, Zen suddenly remembered the information recorded on the inner page of the weapon refining principle written by the master weapon refiner, Chase. Since the Dragon Valley was also recorded in that book, the information of the 8 diagrams in the book should be related to this huge 8 diagrams in front of me, Zen speculated. Zen noticed there were stone sculptures scattered around in the pavilion. They were supposedly assigned to the positions of the 8 Chinese characters in the 8 diagrams. The goal was obvious. To get out of this pavilion, one had to use the sculptures to solve the diagrams first. However, it was very difficult to figure out how to place the sculptures to each character of the 8 diagrams. It needed to be calculated accurately, and in precise numbers. There was absolutely no room for errors in the whole process. In the case of a wrong placement, a fatal threat might befall on them. Even though they were in plenty of potential peril, they had no better way. They were currently intercepted in the pink enchantment area. If they couldn't break through the pavilion, they would all die in the end. Silence enveloped the pavilion as they tried to think of what to do. "What do we do? Who can decode the 8 diagrams?" A female voice asked. It was the long-haired woman, who waited for an answer with anxious eyes. "I can't. I don't know anything about the 8 diagrams," said Wilson, and shook his head. Others shook their heads too. There were some masters skilled at the 8 diagrams among the 7 noble clans, but they weren't with them now. To everyone's surprise, Zen asked, "How about let me try?" "You," screamed Wilson as he viciously glared at Zen. "You had better worry about your own life," he sneered. However, Zen had expected that they would refuse his offer. Of course, it was impossible for them to hand over their fate to an unknown person in a mask. At this point, everyone's mood had turned quite sour. This choice between life and death was a really hard test. After a long while, someone spoke again. "Well, I'll do it," the long-haired woman said and broke the silence. "I used to learn the 8 diagrams. So I know a little bit, though I am not skilled," she added. Nobody answered back. Even though they weren't confident enough with the long-haired woman's ability, they had no other choice. Everyone had acquiesced to remain silent, then the long-haired woman began the work of calculation and prediction. After a while, she suddenly looked up and emitted life vitality from her hands. Her life vitality covered the head of one sculpture like a cap, then slowly raised it up in the air. Chapter 140, Desperate Melee. A loud, rough rumble resonated from the rocky statue. Everyone's eyes were trained on the floating object. The first statue was slowly dragged on the character, Heaven. The floor slightly vibrated as it did so. As he watched the scene unfold, Zen briefly remembered that Chase once wrote the number 3 beside Heaven in his book. Thus, he assumed that 3 statues should be moved to the word Heaven. Once the long-haired woman finished putting the first statue in place, she lowered her head and began to calculate again. When she got the result, she sent a second statue to where Heaven was for the second time. Shortly after, the woman had done the next calculation and moved a third statue to Heaven for the last time. A slight nod was given by Zen. It seemed that she appeared too modest when she claimed that she was not skilled at the 8 diagrams. Her calculation on the first character was exactly the same as the book written by Chase. He only hoped that she could calculate all the next succeeding characters correctly. When the 3 statues were finally placed on the character, Heaven, the big Heaven name carving emitted a golden light. The woman had done it right. The positive outcome made everyone brim with confidence. Sandra's knowledge of formation is extraordinary. How could she merely be proficient? She is qualified to be a formation master. The rest of the illuminating Soul Realm masters showered her with flattery and other words of praise. In return, Sandra only shook her head and slicked back her long hair. Don't count the chickens before they hatch. It's the easiest to work out the first character of the formation. Deciphering a formation becomes harder and harder along the way. The chances of failing become bigger as the calculation gets more complicated, she said. After she finished her talk, her head lowered once again. Then she continued to work on the calculations. 6 statues were next struck on the character, Earth, and this step she performed was also exact the same as stated in Chase's book. This correct move gave Zen a confidence boost as well, as she got 2 consecutive calculations right. Next, Sandra placed 2 statues on the water character, and then 9 statues on the fire. The calculations she did for the first 4 characters were all correct, as bright golden rays of light emanated from all of them. The light was dazzling, but the real excitement came from the characters as everyone was firmly transfixed on them. It seems that this adventure will fare well after nearly so many misses. We can get the supreme treasures of the Immortals soon, one illuminating Soul Realm master exclaimed in excitement. The calculations for the next 4 characters proceeded. The next one up was the character, Valley. If Zen remembered correctly, Chase wrote 4 beside Valley, which meant 4 statues were to be moved to the character. Life vitality was unceasingly released from Sandra's being, and she struck 4 statues in a row towards Valley. After the 4th statue was in place, she proceeded to drag a 5th one. Stop! Someone yelled abruptly. It was Zen, and the moment Sandra began to drag a 5th statue he wasted no time in stopping her. It was a crucial calculation that allowed for no mishaps, so Zen didn't want her to make any mistakes that would trigger the trap of the fairy palace and bring them all to perdition. However, one of them did not seem to agree. You stinking brat, what are you doing? Wilson Huang stared at him and asked angrily. Yet, Zen paid him no mind and shifted his attention to Sandra. On the Valley character, you should only put 4 statues, right? Are you sure it's correct to strike 1 more statue? He asked. A frown made its way to Sandra's face and she looked a little hesitant. She paused momentarily and thought about her calculation. I did the calculation and I am also not sure whether my answer is right. I'm not very sure whether it's 4 or 5 statues. At her response, Zen shook his head and firmly said, then it should be 4. However, Sandra still looked a bit doubtful. Was I wrong? But the result I calculated seemed to be 5, she said with uncertainty. Just then, an illuminating Soul Realm master suddenly said, then just move 5 statues there. Sandra, don't listen to the trash of this brat. He's so disturbing. Stinking brat, we are already very gracious not to have killed you. If you continue to talk nonsense and interrupt Sandra, I will kill you immediately. He added. Wilson again echoed his sentiments and nodded in agreement. Don't be muddled by this brat. He only wants all of us to die with him. What a vicious boy, he shouted. Anxiety crept its way to Zen's thoughts when he saw these two people act so unreasonably against him. We sink or swim together. What makes you think that I will lie to you? He asked incredulously. Shut up, Wilson yelled and cut him off. Life vitality constantly flashed on his body. Stinking brat, talk one more time and I'll kill you immediately. He angrily added. Now, Seymour and other several illuminating soul realm masters also activated the life vitality within their bodies. Their figures emitted bright flashes of light and terrifying power. Zen felt pressed, so he had no choice but to shut up. After a bit of hesitation, Sandra bit her bottom lip and finally chose to believe in herself. Once again, a rocky rumbling sound was heard from a statue. A fifth one was moved towards Valley. Once it was placed into position, a click sound was heard, followed by the sight of Valley turning into a blood-red glow instead of the supposed golden flash of light. Everyone's faces were drained of color, and only then did they realize that Zen was right. Then again, it was already too late for regrets. There was no use crying over spilled milk. They felt the ground shake a bit as the 8 diagrams suddenly began to rotate. When they gradually came to a halt, a white and black mist came out from the 8 diagrams and formed several characters. The writing read, "Desperate melee." What does it mean? It's ominous. We must have fallen into a trap. All the illuminating soul realm masters exclaimed in horror, their faces ghastly pale. The fairy palace was a dangerous place, and they were doomed this time. The characters disappeared into thin air. Shortly after, a strip of life vitality was shot from the 8 diagrams and was directly aimed at Sandra. She was instantly trapped, then in the next second the life vitality targeted the illuminating soul realm master who stood beside Sandra and trapped him as well. It quickly trapped Wilson Huang too. When the life vitality attacked Zen, he jumped in an attempt to dodge it. However, the life vitality's speed was just too fast, like the speed of light, and the moment Zen jumped upward the life vitality seemed to sense his move and swerved accordingly. It successfully trapped Zen into its spell. After all of them were trapped, everyone in the pavilion was connected by the strip of life vitality. What's it doing by locking us together? One of them asked in panic. Meanwhile, Zen lowered his head. Dumbfounded, he looked at the life vitality that had him tied up around the waist. Suddenly, an idea struck his mind and he realized what the life vitality was doing to them. The so-called desperate melee meant that all the people who were connected by the life vitality strip were to fight against each other, and in the final round, only one person would be left alive. The rest of them seemed to realize this too, and they visibly trembled with shock. They were all deep at loss, and cast anxious looks at each other. It was really true that they were pitted in a killing game now. Although the top 7 noble clans held deep grudges against each other and competed against each other for their own benefits, they were now comrades in the adventure of exploring the fairy palace. It would be extremely difficult for them to kill each other when they were currently united as a team now. It was true that they found it hard to kill each other in the noble clans, but it was easy for them to work together and fight against the outsiders that did not belong to the noble clans. Today, there was at least one outsider that they thought would be easy to deal with, and that one was surely Zen. What is the desperate melee? Let's kill this mask brat first. Wilson screamed. He definitely itched to kill Zen ever since the start of the journey, so they would all be rid of him. Now, there was a justified reason for him to do so. As soon as he finished talking, all the bones in his body cracked. The life vitality within him burned madly and came at Zen. Of course, Zen would not stand there motionlessly and wait for death. He hurriedly backed to avoid the attack. Once Wilson lunged at Zen, the piercing sword intent came sharply at him. It stabbed Wilson on the back with a resounding crack, and penetrated right through his chest. Wilson's head lolled to the side and he looked backward. He was flabbergasted when he saw Seymour, who held an exquisite jade sword in his hands and stood behind him. Sorry, this desperate melee will only allow one survivor and it will definitely be me, he said lightly. He had analyzed the situation more thoroughly than Wilson did. Only one person could live in the end, and he clearly knew that the other illuminating soul realm masters were his real opponents. Zen, on the other hand, was merely a nobody who was only half-step into the nature level in his eyes. He was doomed to be killed by the others, so Seymour would let them do the work and didn't bother to do anything to him. Thanks to Seymour's course of action, Zen got a narrow escape from death. Just moments ago, the illuminating soul realm masters all thought to kill Zen first. Now, they began to kill each other. Even Sandra, who helped them to decipher the 8 diagrams, was targeted by 2 of the masters as well. Except for Zen, all the other people were illuminating soul realm masters. Life vitality constantly burned through their bodies and made them move lightning fast in the fight. Thus, even if the huge pavilion was expansive, there seemed to be not enough space for them to dodge the attacks. Different colors of light which represented different types of life vitality suddenly bathed the whole pavilion in a myriad of glowing and dazzling shades. The illuminating soul realm masters of Huang clan, Yu clan, and Yun clan all exerted their efforts to show their unique skills of killing people. All kinds of life vitality gleamed brightly and tangled in the air, while they emitted thunderous noises. The people who had reached the illuminating soul realm were all wise people. They knew it was a choice between to exert all their efforts to kill others, or to be killed. Now that everyone was busy and focused on killing each other, Zen became the least to be threatened. The masters attacked and dodged each other, and many of them shot small glances at Zen. However, with the knowledge that Zen was only half step into the nature level, they brushed past him and didn't bother to attack him at all. They all thought that once they finished killing the others, it would be a piece of cake to get rid of this weakling. If they fought Zen now, they also had to risk being attacked by the other illuminating soul realm masters behind the back, so they all decided to ignore Zen first. A helpless look was etched on Zen's face as he looked at the life vitality that connected him to other people. No matter how this fight would end up, he would undoubtedly face one illuminating soul realm master when it finished. He almost killed Hugh by taking advantage of his 5-clawed golden dragon last time, but that was largely attributed to his good luck. When it came to real strength, he was afraid that he would be no match against the powerful illuminating soul realm masters. What should I do? He muttered to himself. As he watched the illuminating soul realm masters fought fiercely against each other, he brooded deeply in his thoughts. He got quite a lot of time to think as nobody was currently attacking him. At this exact point of time, an illuminating soul realm master suddenly summoned a giant hawk. The giant bird of prey squawked loudly and ferociously came at Seymour. In turn, a green light flashed on Seymour and his jade sword glowed brightly. As he dodged the giant hawk, he waved his sword at the illuminating soul realm master who summoned the giant hawk. The aggressive battle Seymour had him in left no time for the illuminating soul realm master to manipulate his giant hawk, which was formed from his life vitality. Thus, the great bird just hovered aimlessly above Zen's head.